Welcome, everyone. The Sports Box is building the Seattle Kraken expansion mock draft for the 32nd team in the NHL. I am Brian Card with a friendly cast of characters tonight.
All right, that's fine, just as long as they're coming.
Yep, they're on their way.
All right, safe.
Mike's ordering a pizza. It still hasn't here.
I'm so mad right now.
He's talking
to the Domino's guy. Great.
Mike Valletta, Noah Diabler, Garth Patrick will be joining us soon. We will be building the Kraken from the ground up. The expansion draft is tomorrow evening. It'll be live, I think, on ESPN too, now that the contract's on ESPN. So we're going to go team by team, figure out who the hell Seattle and that ownership group is going to take. Guys, any thoughts coming into this that you want to share?
Think.
I hate the Kraken. They should have got a Quebec team first or Hartford.
Hey, take Cody Ceci and I'll love you forever.
The Penguins fan. Let's see.
No, what team are you a fan of?
Pittsburgh Penguins.
Ooh.
The two Flyers gets it. It's just a matter of
We'll get to it.
Inquiring
you get more cups than us. I mean,
it's like a sea serpent or something. You know, I'm not really a fan of these teams. I know the Lightning, but like a fan of these teams where like it's not a plural. I don't like that.
So Chris wants to know what's a Kraken. To my knowledge, it's a sea monster.
Some kind of a serpent.
Mythical sea monster.
Stupid.
Which is dumb. Dumb. Okay.
It is pretty stupid.
Thank you, Gary Bettman. Deep bag.
Anyway, listen. First topic of the night, right? And I think that this has become, I think, the biggest thing about the expansion draft until this gets figured out. And that's what's going on in Montreal, right? So they exposed franchise goaltender Carey Price, which nobody saw coming, but they kind of thought that was a calculated risk because he's turning 34, 5 years left at over $10.5 million. Mike Velarde, I'm going to start with you.
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
Wonderful, I said. Go ahead.
Would you strongly consider, as a brand new franchise with $81.5 million to spend, taking on a 34-year-old goaltender with 5 years left, $10.5 million, knowing what we saw this year in the playoffs?
I mean, the money's actually not that bad. I mean, 5 years, he'd be 39 years old. I mean, I believe I heard that he's a native of around that area, the British Columbia area. Is that true?
He played for Tri-City, which was in that area. Yeah,
I think he's so this would almost be like a home. Is closer to his home. You know, obviously he's been in Montreal for a lot of years. You know, I think comes a question of, does he want to do that? Does he? You know, he's been in Montreal his whole career. Is he going to play 4 or 5 more years? I mean, his play this year looked fantastic. You know, is obviously he's not in the market for a new contract. So, listen, if you're starting a new franchise, I mean, just like the same we talked about before we got on here, Marc-Andre Fleury, 33 years old, goes to Vegas, wins a Vezina this year, 2 or 3 years later. So I think it's a good move. I think that they would be, you know, I would strongly be for them to take him.
Mike.
We had this conversation before, me and Mike. I mean, I know they took Fleury when he was 33 with the Golden Knights, and look how he's become. He's become good with them. But with Carey Price, I mean, I think he's not the same as Fleury. I think you probably could get 2 or 3 more years out of Price. I would take Price under the assumption that you can draft a young goaltender that's going to fill in for him in the next 3 years, because I don't think you get more than 3 years out of Carey Price, and I want an out in that agreement. I don't want 5 years locked in and you can't do anything with it and you're strapped with Carey Price. Not that he's going to go south in a hurry. I just think that you can get a better young goaltender to fit a younger team and grow with that team over the long term than kind of a short fix Carey Price. But then again, if you look how the Knights drafted, I mean, they had an all-star team the first time they drafted, so it probably wouldn't be a bad thing to pick up Carey Price. If it was me, though, and I'm building a Kraken, I'm not taking Carey Price unless, again, I can have 3 years of him and an out and get a young goaltender to fill in for him.
No.
I'm taking him. No thoughts, no questions about it. I get what you guys are saying with the contract. I think it'll be a little worse than towards the end. But, I mean, I was looking at the other goalies. Would I take any of them over Carey Price? I mean, I thought Tuukka Rask, Freddie Anderson, they were the other ones I was looking at. But you're going to have to give them contracts. And do I think they're better than Carey Price? I don't think so. I just saw what he did this last season. Absolutely elite. I think he's still got a few years in the tank. So if I'm starting the team, you need a goalie that's very important. You mentioned what Fleury did. Fleury was a guy that when he was leaving Pittsburgh, he was not this, surefire pick or anything. He had a lot of doubters, a lot of questions about him. And what he's done the past few years, I mean, you can look at the Vezina Trophy. His first year there, he took him to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think Carey Price could do that and then some for them, in my opinion. I think he's still, the top 5, top 3 goalie in the league. And comparing to other guys they take, I mean, there's no contest. So, yes, I would take him. I'm not even thinking twice about it.
Brian has jumped on a little bit late. Yes, Mike is still not happy.
Absolutely.
Not happy.
Absolutely has. They shouldn't. They don't deserve a team over Quebec and Hartford. I'm sorry. That's just maybe old school I am, but they shouldn't deserve a team first. You don't need a team an hour from Vancouver.
Here's what I'll say about Carey Price in Seattle, right? Financially, I think it's a total disaster because more and more, I think these kind of deals for goaltenders are going a bit by the wayside. Outside of a guy like Vasilevsky, who's, I mean, look, you can't fight the results, right? But when you have so much of your salary cap locked into a goaltender, it really does hurt you from doing other things. Again, obviously forwards and defense. Now, I'm going to go against my better judgment here and say that I absolutely would take him. And it's not so much because I think, oh, this makes me an instant contender. But what it does is give me instant credibility in that I have a star goaltender to start off my new franchise. And if you're trying to create some buzz with a brand new franchise that people have never seen before, you will sell a lot of jerseys with Price 31 on the back, given the fact of the run that he just went on, where – guys, you remember those Ranger years where it was Lundqvist and friends, like that's all that they had. And that's pretty much Montreal. All that they had outside of a couple of offensive players was Carey Price. And he willed them to victory as far as they would have got, farther than anybody thought that they would. I had him out in the first round. I think everybody else and their mother did too. So I think that you take him for the sole purpose of you are immediately legitimate off the bat with a legit number one goaltender. And again, if you see what Fleury did for Vegas, he created that environment for them off the jump. So do I like 10-5? No, but I think I can rationalize it for this player in this situation. Thoughts?
And I think on that post you said, Brian, or you posted yesterday about Carey Price, Brian, I think someone said, yes, I'd take him solely because he'd put butts in the seats. And I think he would. I mean, when you're talking about guys that are big market players, I mean, even if you hate the Canadians, everyone knows who Carey Price is. In my opinion, I think he's a Hall of Fame goalie. I think the organization has completely underachieved the entire time he's been there. And I mean, no disrespect to the Canadians, but I think they should have been out in round one. I think Toronto completely blew that series. And I think he took a team to the finals that, no disrespect to their players. They have some players I like. But, I mean, does their best player even get on Tampa's top 2 or 3 lines? It's a bit of a question for me. So, I think he's shown he can carry a team, and he's probably going to have to this first year because they're going to need some time to get some more guys in there. We'll see what they do with that second overall pick as well. But, I mean, I know the contract, it's going to be a bit of a problem towards the end, but if he can make you a relevant team, you establish yourself right away, would you really care towards the end of it? So
I guess if you get the crack in the draft like the Knights did, the Knights drafted an all-star team that first year, and me and Brian we talked about that immensely. That how they got they got those great first 2 years out of the Knights, and they were they're still a good team. And
I just looked over the team. I just looked over the names of these guys available, and this is going to be the same thing.
The rules are exactly the same. Remember, they're paying $500 million for a team, so that the league is somewhat invested in them becoming competitive rather quickly. And frankly, you talk about the financials right now. Again, you didn't have fans in seats for over a year, so that money's very helpful in keeping everything moving. At least
the thing with me, that Carey Price did have a phenomenal year, and we know he's been a good goaltender, and he's a Hall of Fame goaltender. But do you really think he's going to have 3 or 4 more years like he did this year in the league? I don't know if he can do that. I mean, that Montreal team, he really had to get some chemistry together with those guys, and that's the year he put together this year. I mean, he was the goalie this year to put the team on his back and carry them through some of these series. I don't know if he can do that the next 2 or 3 years. Can he do it next maybe 1 or 2? Maybe. I don't know if the long-term answer is him. Maybe, like I said, that's why I give him 3 years, and then I look to either move him or move on from Carey Price. That's I'm looking long-term on this. So.
Yeah, but the thing I'm looking at, Mike, like I said, the goalies I looked at, do I see any guys that are true long-term solutions? I didn't really see anything, and I think like you said. Does Carey Price have 2 or 3 more good years? I personally think so. And if he does fall off, I mean, sure, the contract will be terrible, but I think he's just going to fall off and be this, average starter or backup goalie instantly. I don't think so. So, I think if they can get maybe 3 or 4 years of just, above average goalie play, I think they'd take that because, like I said, the other guys I looked at, I don't see another long-term solution. I saw a bunch of, career backups, and guys like Freddie Anderson has massive question marks around him. The only other guy I really looked at was Tuukka Rask. And would I take him over Carey Price? I don't think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like I said, you get that jump off the bat. You are a team to be taken seriously if you have a goaltender like that. So, that's a big decision for them to make. We're going to go team by team, so we'll get to Montreal. Next up, St. Louis. So, Vladimir Tarasenko was exposed, and to me, that was a bit of a shocker because you knew that everything wasn't hunky-dory, and they were talking about moving him and this, that, and the third. He wanted out. They wanted him out. But that was for a trade, not a giveaway. So, he's 29 years old. He's coming off 2 shoulder surgeries. He's played 34 total games the last 2 years with 2 years left at $7.5 million. Michael, I'll start with you here. I mean, it's not inexpensive. He might be the definition of damaged goods, and I love the player. But which Tarasenko are you getting? The Tarasenko that used to put up 40 goals a year a couple of years ago, or the one that's only played, not even 36 games in 2 shortened seasons?
No, I think it's a no-brainer. I would take Tarasenko on this team. I think he needs to change the scenery. I know the injuries look a little bit shaky with him, but he's still that kind of player. I mean, healthy. He's ridiculous out there, and he can do some things. I don't think he's been happy in St. Louis the last few seasons there, or this season at least. I think a change of scenery is good for him. I definitely take Tarasenko, even with the injuries. 2 years left at 7.5. That's fine. I don't mind. 29-year-old guy, take the chances on the injury. I'll take him.
No.
It's a really tough one for me. I think that, the question everyone would have is that old player still in, the old Vlad? And is it worth a risk? And, in my opinion, I think if he's healthy, he can still be that 30, 35 goal guy, roughly maybe a little below a point per game, but around that region. I don't think the contract is absolutely ridiculous, especially when you look at some of the contracts around the league. If he can stay healthy, I'd say absolutely. So it's just a matter of would they take that risk? If I was them, he's a player that, in my opinion, I think is worth the risk. Now, I did do a mock. I personally did not take him. I heavily considered it. But, I mean, if they take him, I'm not going to complain about that. I think he's a fantastic player when healthy. The only issue with him, like we said, is the health. Is that just a freak thing? Is it going to be a recurring, thing the rest of his career? I mean, 2 years left, it's not absolutely terrible. If it was like 4 or 5 left, completely different story. Okay, if it doesn't work out, he can be gone in 2 years. So I would take a risk on him. I think he's a player that when he's healthy, 35 to 40 goals, 70, 75 points, he's worth the risk in my opinion.
Well, as Mike picks up his pizza there, Mike, is it what you ordered? Did you finally get what you?
Yes.
Where Mike is he coming here to New York? So.
All right. So we're talking about Tarasenko still.
Yes. Your thoughts on possibly Tarasenko and the Kraken?
I think that they do take him. What's it? $7.5 million over the next 2 seasons left.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll give you a little. Man, I'm a Philly guy, obviously. How about they take Tarasenko and Van Riemsdyk, and then flip Tarasenko to the Flyers for Voracek?
Who would you rather have, Voracek or Tarasenko?
I hate Voracek.
Right.
That's my opinion. Now, do I think Tarasenko gives the Flyers something else? It's hard because, like you said, he's only played 34 games the last 2 seasons. You don't know what we know what he's capable of. And I like him better than Voracek from that aspect. So, the general question is, do I think that he'd be good for Seattle? I do. I think he would be okay.
I actually think he's more of a risk than Price would be, just because you really don't know what you're getting. And no, it's not you don't have a ton of term. I think if they take him to flip him. We'll go through St. Louis. There's another name or two that I think are a little more interesting than Tarasenko at this point. I just don't think that when you have a free give like this, like a giveaway, I can pick whatever I want, that I necessarily want to hitch my wagon to a guy who's coming in with known injuries that I don't know what I'm getting. I think there's so much unknown that I wouldn't take that risk. Now they might, because again, if this is a player they think that they can sell off, and what they can sell him off for is more than they would take from somebody else from St. Louis, I can understand that thought process. I just think the risk to me is I'm a little hesitant there.
It's not a long-term deal, though. I'm fine with 2 years. If it was 4 or 5 years, yeah, I'd be a little skeptical of that. 2 years is not a big deal for a team that's, going to start out, and I'll roll the dice with him. I mean, he's proven in the past that he can play. I mean, he is a very, very good player. He could be a top 10 player in the league. So
a legitimate name, no question. I mean, again, it's not Carey Price, but it's a legitimate name.
Right.
With Colorado, so this one's interesting because the biggest name here is Gabriel Landeskog, but it's not really Gabriel Landeskog because he's a unrestricted free agent. So all that you would really get by taking him from Colorado is about a week or so of negotiation time, because if he gets to next Wednesday, he'll hit the open market like everybody else. Now, having said that, the benefit that Seattle has is they have $0 against their salary cap. So they can give this a bigger contract than anybody else in the league can. I don't dislike Landeskog, 28 years old, power forward, an immediate captain type player. But Noah, when you have a chance to take possibly a player who's under contract or who you control for a longer period of time, whatever you can offer Landeskog, you can offer him on Wednesday of next week too. And he knows coming in, he's probably going to have that conversation given that you have 81.5 to fill. There's some other names again with Colorado that I find interesting. Where are you on this?
I wouldn't take Landeskog, not because I don't think he's a great player. I think he's a very good player. I just think, like you said, they would have to negotiate with him. I would not take a chance with a player that, you let him go or you try and take him and then he just walks anyway. In my opinion, if you want to take a guy that needs a contract, it should be an RFA, so you at least have some control over that. But, I mean, we just mentioned Tarasenko. I know we're about to mention 2 more players in a minute. Looking at those players, I would take Tarasenko over Landeskog, and I would take one of those 2 players over Landeskog as well. So I would not personally take him. I think he's a good player. He's just not what I would be looking for personally.
So are we giving our thoughts on who we think that they should take?
Oh, we're going through the whole thing.
Like right now in Colorado? See, I think another guy, he's like a middle 6 guy, like Jonas Donskoy. Okay? Cheaper. He's proven in the last 2 years that he could score 20, 25 goals. I just don't think that you're gonna have the ability to have a team with Tarasenko's, Van Riemsdyk's, Landeskog. There's no way they're going to be able to sign these guys eventually, too. So that comes into play down the road as well.
Well, I think, Mike, you can do that, but it's going to come back and bite you. I mean, it's going to hurt you 1 year. It's all going to come back and landslide on you. But I'm going to take a page out of Noah's book. I wouldn't take him as well. I think he's going to get a ton of money. And I don't know if you're Seattle, you tie yourself up with, I think he goes back to Colorado, actually. I think they give him they sign him to enough money that he goes back there. But yeah, no, I wouldn't take him. I'd look around a little bit more.
I mean,
Henry Zimanoff, who I know is a Colorado fan, he posts a lot and outside the box about his Colorado teams, which obviously if you're not in there, join today. He thinks Landeskog could get paid big time if he signs an extension with Colorado. I think at this point he's going to market. I don't think he has any reason not to, because you can go back to Colorado if you decide that. That's why, to me, if I'm Seattle, I take my shot when he's a free agent. You know what I mean? I don't rush into it. He's
right at that age where he's going to get that big contract, and this is coming. So,
Brandy Hayward from our friends over at What a Dump Hockey, she says JT Confer. We will talk about Colorado. He's actually my pick for them, but we'll break that down. We're going to go team by team here in just a minute or two, and literally draft this all the way through. So we'll be picking Colorado's as well. Tom Scavetta from our friends over at Review and Preview thinks to take Bailey or Eberle off Long Island. I could not disagree more, and I will tell you why when we get there.
I think Eberle.
I don't think either of them are correct.
I think Eberle could be going. So
it's too old. Last but not least of our burning questions, which I'm sure Mike Velarde has a lot of thoughts about.
Yeah.
The Seattle Kraken and Jake Voracek. I had these pre-made videos. I didn't even use them, so I'll use this one. Should the Kraken take Jake Voracek or James Van Riemsdyk? Voracek's 31 years old, 3 years left at 8.25. For JVR, 32, 2 years left at $7 million. Now, Mike, I know that you hate Jake Voracek. Right, you've made that abundantly clear for a very long time.
Both Mikes hate Jake Voracek.
From an objective standpoint, if you are Seattle, not what you want them to do, but what would you do?
Take all of them. They all suck. I mean, listen, JVR was recently just added because they traded Nolan Patrick or Phil Myers. So he was they kept Nick Albay-Kubel and decided to put JVR in there. I think it's all for contract purposes, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is going to go. It's going to be either Voracek or Van Riemsdyk. I would love for them to take Voracek. I think they take Van Riemsdyk.
Mm-hmm.
There's just more upside, more goal scoring. Voracek just doesn't give you much right now.
No,
I don't care. I don't care about 9 goals and 30 assists. It does nothing for me.
No, I agree. I think JVR goes. I don't think Voracek is the one that goes. I think JVR, although he's not a 40-goal scorer, I think he does a little bit more in the way of complement different guys on the teams, whereas Voracek has gone the other way, and he's really not living up to that money he got with that original 7-year deal he got. So, yeah, I agree with Mike. I think JVR gets taken. I wish they would take Voracek too, but it's not going to happen. I think JVR goes to
Instead
Seattle.
of being JVR, it should have been Patrick Kane, but I'll keep that to myself with the second pick in the draft. Of all years.
We're going back.
Where are you on this one?
Hate it.
I would take JVR. I think he's a slightly better player. You have one less year on the contract, and the contract is less expensive.
Yep.
In my opinion, it's honestly a no-brainer. I would easily take JVR over Jacob Voracek. I think Voracek has heavily regressed the past few years, especially since he got that contract.
Yep.
And and JVR, I mean, he might be a little overpaid, but I think he is a better player, and it's only 2 years left, so, I mean, it's not a massive term. I would take JVR.
Garth, I owe you a beer for your team beating the Islanders. So next time you're in Jersey,
Congratulations, Garth.
Tampa Bay, back-to-back Tampa Bay Lightning. We're going to go team by team, but since you're getting in here right on this spot here, your thoughts. If you're Seattle, do you take one of these high-priced players from Philly, or do you look elsewhere?
I say they got to go JVR here, guys. One thing that does worry me, as you know, I've looked through a lot of these mock drafts, is they're going to be taking a lot of older guys, which for now, you know, that might pay off. That might get them in the postseason, but later down the road, you know, I don't know if they're really going to be set up for long-term success.
And Garth, just a quick question. We're going to get to the teams, but man, your boys, would they protect like 6 guys? They got the whole roster unprotected.
Yeah, I think we're kind of daring the Kraken to take somebody and release some cap space that we need badly.
Well, let's break it down. This is a phenomenal tool from our friends at capfriendly.com. So basically, and you can do this yourself, by the way, it's free to use. There's no cost to it. Every team's protections are right here. And we're going to go team by team, look at who is available. And then we have I have a predetermined list I've frankly put together because it's cap compliant, which is more important. But we want to talk this through.
So if anybody has to go to bed at 4 a.m, you know, just hop off.
It's all good. It's all good. So let's start with the Anaheim Ducks. So Anaheim's got some notable forwards here that you've obviously heard of. Now, I'm looking at this more from, you know, Noah brought this up, and I agree that guys who are UFA right now, there is not a lot of point in taking. So like Ryan Getzlaf, for example, he is out of a contract in a week. Why am I going to take that player?
So for me, anyway, I mean, he's been around.
Yeah, I kind of ignored all the UFA 2021s for the most part, right? But when you look at Anaheim here, again, some of the guys that stand out that have some term on their deal or their RFA, Adam Henrique, the former Devil, Danton Heinen, the former Boston Bruin, Sonny Milano's been around, Derek Grant, Mike, you probably remember from his cup of coffee with the Flyers.
Yep.
A couple notable defensemen, Kevin Shattenkirk, who won the Stanley Cup in Tampa Bay, brought it to New York. Appreciate that, buddy. Hayden Fleury, former Carolina Hurricane. Anthony Stolarz, the former Flyer goalie, is there as well.
Stinks.
Mike Laurie, what of these names kind of stands out to you here that could be a selection from the Ducks?
Which Mike?
Mayor.
Okay. Yeah.
Kevin Shattenkirk.
Why?
Well, I think it's between him and Henrique. And I think that they try to go defense with a lot of these big names that they have on the list already. I think Shattenkirk's not a bad value. What's he got? $3.9 million left for 2 years. I just think he's a veteran defenseman who they can get cheap, who once did, pretty well offensively in the league. So I think that could help him. I think Adam Henrique's a little too old. Like I said, I mean, Shattenkirk's not really young either, but I think it'll help him defensively.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. Yeah, I agree with Mike. I'd take Shattenkirk as well. Veteran presence that's going to give the young defense that hopefully they get can anchor them a little bit. Still got a little bit of play left. I don't think he's that old. He's not too young either, but I think it's a slam dunk. I think Anaheim, they take Shattenkirk.
No.
It's between three guys for me. Shattenkirk is one of them. I'm not taking Henrique. I think that contract's a little too high for his age, and it goes to 2024. I'm either taking Shattenkirk, Hayden Fleury, or Danton Heinen. If they want that veteran guy, I think Shattenkirk's a great choice. $3.9 million, for 2023, that's not bad at all. Me personally, like I said, I would probably prefer to take an RFA so you can then sign him. It's between Fleury or Heinen, and in my opinion, it's really tough. I would probably take Danton Heinen.
Garth?
I think they go Shattenkirk here. I think that what you're going to see is they're going to take a lot more veterans on the defensive side. And I think despite his age, Shattenkirk had, this past season with the Ducks had something like around 20 minutes time on ice per game. So, he's showing that he can still play minutes, and that despite his age, he might have, a couple more good seasons under his belt. So I think they go defense here.
The pick that I made was from a linkage standpoint and a cap standpoint, and that pick is Hayden Fleury. Hayden Fleury was the 7th overall pick, Mike Velarde. You'll remember, taken around the time Ivan Provorov was taken in that draft. And he was drafted by Ron Francis when he was in Carolina. So he knows the player very well. He's only 25, plays both sides of the blue line. He's an RFA. He's got a year left on the deal. And remember, they don't want to blow up their cap right now. I mean, you don't want to necessarily, because there's some big names here, which we're going to touch on with big dollars. The thing about Kevin Shattenkirk, I just don't think, and I like the player. I unabashedly love the player. I loved him in New York for the time he was there. But at $3.9 million, I think it's a little high given what else is out there on the defensive side of things. And I agree with, I think it was you said Henrique at 5'8" is high for a 31-year-old center.
Yes.
I don't see a lot of value just in the number. Remember, I mean, you can say he's a good player. I'm not going to dispute that. I hate him for obvious reasons, but that's a big number for a 31-year-old with term behind it. So, again, in my mock, I had them taking Hayden Fleury. I could easily see him taking a Brendan Gould or a Jacob Larson. I think the value in Anaheim is in those young defensemen. So I'll take the one that I think is the most talented of the bunch with a connection around Francis, and to me, that was Hayden Fleury. So we'll put his name on the board. Next up, the Arizona Coyotes. Now, off the bat, there's no shot in hell they're taking Andrew Ladd, recently acquired from the New York Islanders. There's not a lot of notable names here, guys that you would consider. Tyler Pitlick, I think, didn't he play in the Flyers for like about 2 weeks?
He was actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
No, he was a couple years.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. I thought he was only there for a short period of time. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody. I
think 1 year, Mike. Yeah, 1 year he was there. Yeah.
Christian Fischer's name stands out to me. If you look at their defense, it's a lot of older guys and it's a lot of UFAs, right? So again, we're trying to avoid UFAs because you don't control them. They're gone in a week. So there's just no point. There's no, comp picks or anything like that. So we'll start with you on this one. Who stands out to you here in Arizona, a team that's kind of in disarray right now with no first round pick?
Well, no one stands out, if I'm being honest. I think this list is absolutely terrible. But if I'm taking someone, like I said earlier, I would take an RFA. It's between, I think you said Tyler Pitlick and Christian Fischer. I would take Christian Fischer. I believe he's something like 23, 24 years old still, so maybe some upside there. RFA through 2022, so he's got a term, and you don't have to worry about losing him after that contract is up. I would take Christian Fischer, but like I said, I mean, this list is not great, if I'm being honest.
Fair. Yeah, they're not really well. So, I mean, you can tell the team's not really doing that well. These are the people that are available that aren't protected. Mike Velarde.
I'm going with somebody who did not play a lot, 21 games, Michael Bunting. Reason being, when he was in the lineup, he actually did fairly well. I'm looking at some stats here, 10 goals, 21 assists, or 10 goals in 21 games. He is a UFA, though, so I don't know if you're going to get into, obviously it's better to be an RFA, I would assume, because you have the rights to him. But I'm going to go with him. Like Noah said, the list is terrible.
Garth.
Yeah, nothing really jumps out at me here. I would have to go with Fischer because, like Noah said, he is very young, 23, 24, somewhere in there. And he's shown that he can be effective not only on offense but in the penalty kill as well. So they kind of get a two-way player here.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mike Galetta.
Yeah, no, I looked at Bunning, Fisher, and Pitlick, and you talk about Bunning, like Mike said, he's an unrestricted free agent. I don't want to touch that because you don't get a bidding war again with that. But I'm going with Fisher because of the age. I think Pitlick is 29. He gives you a little bit of forecheck and things like that. But I like Fisher with the age. You want to have a guy in for a long term. So yeah, I'll take him.
I agree. Christian Fisher was formerly a very high second-round pick. You're talking about a 24-year-old kid. Again, if you're looking for these are the guys that, like, someone's going to pan out. Someone's going to become a second liner. It's coming in cheap at only $1 million. And like everybody kind of noticed, this is not really a very large list of great players to choose from, right? So there's going to be some teams where there's some decisions to make. In here, I don't think there's one at all. I really think Christian Fisher stands out. A guy like Pitlick, again, he's 29, been around the block. I mean, more of a journeyman type player. So I think, to me, I'd rather put in some time with a guy like Christian Fisher, who I might be able to get a middle six winger out of. So we will add Christian Fisher to the list that I am keeping down the bottom. Next up, the Boston Bruins. Now, you're going to see some big names here, but you'll notice that most of them are also unrestricted free agents, which means, again, you don't have any contracts to them. So from the standpoint of guys who have some term, Andre Kasha, the former Duck, Curtis Lazar, the former Sabre, Nick Ritchie is there on the forward side of things. They have some young defensemen, Jacob Zboril, Connor Clifton, Jeremy Lazon. As far as goaltending, look, Tuukka Rask isn't going anywhere. Everybody knows that. So they're not going to waste a pick there. Mike Velarde, I'll start this one with you. Anybody stand out to you in Boston?
I'm going to go Connor Clifton. Reason being, like I said, doing a little bit of research on like Paul McRae on these things. Good young right-handed defenseman. Apparently he has a familiarity with the assistant coach. He's only got a $1 million hit for 2 years, I believe. So it's almost like he's playing for league minimum. So, why not? It's they're going to have to take cheaper, younger guys at some point to fill out the roster. So, I'll go with him.
Native of Long Branch, New Jersey, Connor Clifton.
I rescind my pick. Just kidding.
Garth.
Yeah, finally we get a list here where you could see them possibly taking multiple different guys. I got to agree with the fact that at some point they do have to take some of these cheaper players because there is a lot of guys that they're going to take on, higher average annual values. So I think that, them taking Clifton here is a very good possibility for only $1 million a year. And, he's a young guy with a lot of upside.
Mike?
I was between Anjay Case and Clifton. Like Mike said, but I'll take Clifton only because he's a little bit cheaper. Like kind of like Garth said, you got to start cutting the payroll a little bit. I mean, he's only 1 year, $1 million for 2 years. He could play from both. He could play both sides of the the side. He could play on both sides of the area. So yeah, I'm going to go with Clifton.
No.
Two guys for me. One of them is Andre Kasha. I'm not going to take him because even though I like him, he's an RFA, so you can sign him. I'm just looking, down the list. There are a lot more wingers I'm going to take. I'm not a big fan of Nick Ritchie or anyone else on that forward line. In my opinion, I'm going to take a defenseman. I'm not taking Connor Clifton. I'm taking Jeremy Lazone, 24 years old, RFA through 2022. Maybe he's got some upside. It says he can play both sides of the defense. I think he had something like he was a +8 last year with 8 points. So, I mean, pretty solid for the fact, he's probably a top 6, barely plays at all. It's going to be either Clifton or Lazone, in my opinion, is who I would take, and I would take Jeremy Lazone.
I definitely think it's going to come down to preference between one of those two guys because, again, really, from the forwards, a guy like Curtis Lazar, former Sabre, I don't think it really is. He was just a throw with the Hall deal. Even Zach Senyshyn, former first-round pick. If you remember, the Bruins had those 3 first-round picks in a row that they kind of screwed up every single one. Chris Wagner's a little up there in age. I do think it comes down to Clifton or Lazon. I remember hearing Clifton's name quite a bit in the series between the Boston and the Islanders as I was heavily rooting for Boston, obviously. So I had Connor Clifton in my mock again. He gives you somebody who's going to be a UFA in a couple of years, somebody who, again, at 26, a little bit more of a veteran presence, not an older player by any stretch, but a little bit older than Lazon. To me, I want to try to vary around the ages. I think Clifton makes a lot of sense. So he's who I had in my list. But I do agree with you, Noah. I do think it's one of those two guys. Next up, the Buffalo Sabres, who stink very badly. And the name that probably pops out to you right there is Jeff Skinner and his $9 million a year cap hit through 2027. Of course he waived his no movement clause because ain't nobody taking that contract. There are some names who obviously stand out. Colin Miller was taken by Vegas in their expansion draft. Garth, anybody kind of stand out to you here for the Buffalo Sabres, who, again, are terrible?
So I think that one guy that could kind of fly under the radar here, and it avoids that $9 million per year Jeff Skinner contract, is actually Owen Power. He kind of, is that big body defenseman that shows a lot of physical upside. Again, it could, I feel like they're going to be getting a lot of good defensemen in this draft. I feel like they're going to go with another one here.
Mike?
Which one?
I'm going in order. Mike Velarde. Mike Galetta. Sorry, I'm trying my best up and down.
I'm going to go with defenseman Will Borgen. Here's a guy who was drafted pretty high. Fourth round he was taken first, but young player, defenseman, played 10 games, showed a little bit of promise. I'll take Will Borgen from a bad Buffalo roster.
It is not good. No.
Borgen's a good pick. Once again, like Mike just said, absolutely terrible list. Just strike off Jeff Skinner and Okpoza right away. Terrible contracts, and honestly, they're not even great players in the first place. For me, I want a nice, bottom six center who can win you face-off. So it's between Girgensons and Eakin for me. I'm not really a fan of Girgensons. I think he's been a massive disappointment for what people thought he could be. I would take Cody Eakin.
Real quick, Garth, isn't it amazing 5 years ago Jeff Skinner's there? We're all over him.
He had 1 year, man. Dude had 1 year and he cashed in. Mike Velarde.
I'm going Girgensons.
You just like the name?
No. $22 million, 2 years. He missed the entire year, I believe, with a hamstring injury. But listen, he's like a third line guy. He's not going to be your top six, but he'll be there, obviously.
As I look through these lists, I so far, and this is the third team out of four that I feel this way. I just think the value's in that young defense. Borgen played for the pro team last year, and he's probably one of the guys Buffalo really doesn't want to lose, given the fact that Rasmus Dahlin's been good. He hasn't been number one pick good. So they are still building that defense. Probably going to get a defenseman in the top of the draft. William Borgen is my pick as well. 24 years old, inexpensive, RFA, will not cost you a lot to keep under contract. To me, none of the forwards stand out compared to some other guys that are available the rest of the way. And you do have to take 9 defensemen as a minimum. If you look across the top, guys, where it says at least 15 forwards or 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, 3 goalies. And again, those 2021-22 contracts. Right now, I've only spent $4 million and we're 4 teams in. I guess that's pretty good. But Bill Borgen was my pick there as well. I agree with Mike Galetta on that one. The Calgary Flames, biggest name there obviously is Milan Lucic, who waived his no trade, no movement clause because nobody's taken Milan Lucic. Brett Ritchie, interesting name. Probably the biggest name on defense here is Mark Giordano, who is their captain. He's 37. He is a UFA at the end of next season. But to me, if I'm going to take an older player, that's the kind of older player that I'm going to take. Someone who gives me instant credibility on my blue line, captain material, leadership out the wazoo from the start. I have Mark Giordano being the pick here, not just because I think he's the best player of the bunch, but they struggle with Calgary as far as whoever they were going to expose. They did not want to expose Mark Giordano. I think that he is the pick. Brandy Hayward says Giordano or Oliver Keelington is what she thinks. Mike Galetta, your thoughts?
I was going to say Giordano or Richie, but Brian, I'll go with your pick, Giordano. I like that pick. And believe it or not, whether this is true or not, from a couple different sites, Gaudreau has fallen way out of favor in Calgary. I know they protected him, but they were supposedly close to putting him on the unprotected list. That's kind of crazy to think that with Johnny Gaudreau, because he'd probably be one of the first picks taken. But he's fallen out of favor a little bit in Calgary, so stay tuned with that. But back to your pick, Brian. I'll take Giordano.
No.
This is the first one I think so far, guys. No question in my mind. I'm taking Mark Giordano. solid left-handed defenseman. Now he is 37, but the contract is up after next year. So I mean that cap hit, you're not going to have to worry about it for long. If he produces, you could re-sign him. If he doesn't, you can just let him walk. And looking at the forwards, I mean, I'm not touching Milan Lucic with a 100-foot pole, and everyone else there not really interested. So no question in my mind, Mark Giordano.
Mike,
we are 4 for 4. I'm taking him as well. Like you guys said, about $6.75 million for 1 year.
Yep.
Won a Norris Trophy 2 years ago. Played in all 56 games this year. I think he averaged around 22 minutes of ice time. So you're getting the production from him, and he will be the first captain for Seattle if he is taken.
Garth.
Yeah, I got to agree with you guys here. Give some credibility to that blue line, and I think at least the past 2 postseasons we've seen just how impactful veteran defensemen can be and how much they can bring to a team. So I got to go Giordano here as well.
I think you have to, when you're building a team, you have to strike a balance in between youth, because you got to build a team obviously for the longer term, and these immediate impact type players. And yes, I understand he's 30-70. I don't think he skipped a beat. So I'm happy to, take him off Calgary's hands, and Calgary's not going to be overly excited. And again, don't be surprised some of these names, if there's not some side deals, the way there was with Vegas. Hey, like, don't take this guy. We'll give you this, take this guy so we can keep this guy. Wouldn't surprise me at all if that happens again. And teams really got bent over a couple of years ago with the Golden Knights. We are all 5 for 5 in agreement. Mark Giordano, the selection from Calgary. Now, Carolina is very interesting because there's really a couple of guys here that stand out that, to me, would make absolute phenomenal fits. Brandy Hayward, as a Flames fan, you're making me so hopeful. I think for him to stay, Calgary's going to have to offer like a second round pick, something that entices Vegas to leave him there, which they can do. It's part of the rules, right? From Carolina, there's a couple names that stand out to me. Obviously, the bigger names, like a Dougie Hamilton, is an upcoming free agent, so I'm not going to waste my time there. But Niederreiter, 1 more year at 5.25. Jake Gardner is there, 2 more years at just over 4. Jake Bean, a young defenseman, RFA. He's very inexpensive, but he is needing a new contract. And, of course, the goalies there, a lot of UFAs like Mrazek and Reimer, probably not wasting your time there. Mike Galetta, where are you on Carolina?
I am all over Jake Bean, 23 years old, 12 points in a short period of time. I could pull that up in a second for you. 12 points in 42 games. And I love him because he's 23. I mean, there's a guy, if you got to pay him, okay, that's fine. I'll pay a 23-year-old guy with some upside to play for me. Yeah, so I'm taking Jake Bean, no questions.
No.
It's really tough. I'm looking at our roster so far. We already have 4 defensemen. I would, really love Jake Bean. It's between him or Gardner, and I think Bean, he's just way younger. He's a better player, in my opinion, and he's an RFA. I'm really looking at Nino Niederreiter, though, because I do like him as a player. It's between him and Jake Bean. And just because we have 4 defensemen so far and we need some forwards, I'm taking Nino Niederreiter.
Oh, Garth killed me.
Mike Velarde.
I am actually going to take Jake Bean as well.
Attaboy.
One of the reasons, yes, all of the things that you guys have said, but he was actually drafted by Ron Francis in 2016. So you would have to think that if he drafted him and sort of liked him playing a little bit, he is 23, younger guy, why not take him in the expansion draft?
Ernest Badiola, new name. Appreciate that. Give us a like on the page. Says Price will be selected. Goalie from Florida that they're getting to, which we're going to get to Florida at a couple teams here. Thinks Tarasenko is going to get taken, Landeskog too. So many names. That's what he's got so far. Looks like he's a Sharks fan from what I can tell. Appreciate the interaction there. Garth, where are you on Carolina?
Yeah, I got to agree with Noah here that it's definitely between Nino and Jake Bean. And I would love to see them take a forward here, but my gut goes with they're going to go defense again and snag Jake Bean here.
I struggle with this because, and I think it's the same decision that Noah had. It's, do I take a left wing who I may lose sooner than later in Niederreiter, who's he's flourished really in Carolina, or again, Jake Bean was a very high draft pick, 13th overall by Carolina in 2016. You have that connection to Ron Francis, and I know that we're going to pick our 5th defenseman here in the first 6 teams, but to me, I just think that that's obvious because if you're trying to build a decor for the long term, you want these guys that are at around this age. And to get a guy like him, again, he's so much cheaper than Jake Gardner and so much younger, just stands out in that defense core. And if I'm not going to go Niederreiter, which it wouldn't shock me if they did, but I do think that a guy like Bean, given, again, the contract, it's not going to cost you that much to have him. To me, I think that that's a very easy pick, given the fact that, again, when you're building this team and you've had these connections from where you've been before, I think these are guys that you like. These are guys that you've chosen before. So yes, we're over halfway through our minimum on defense, and we're very early on. But I do think Jake Bean is the pick there. Next up, Chicago Blackhawks. I almost skipped one. So for Chicago here, there's not really anybody huge to me that stands out. Right? Actually, one name which I'll get to when it's my turn. Noah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of UFAs here. I don't know if anybody. I don't think Malcolm Subban necessarily fits the bill. Where are you on Chicago?
Two guys for me. You did just mention them. You do need a backup goalie, so I did consider Malcolm Subban. I'm not going to take him. In my opinion, this isn't the most impressive list. I'm looking at the defense. I think these guys have slightly bloated contracts. Looking at the forward core, and I think I'm going to stick with the RFA route. I would probably take Adam Gaudette, a former Vancouver Canucks player. I really like him. I think he's just a nice two-way player. Bottom six forward, he can win some faceoffs for you. I would take Gaudette. There's not a wealth of choice here, but I would probably take him.
That is who I would go with as well. Noah pretty much said everything.
Garth?
Yeah. You got to go. Excuse me, guys. You got to go get that here. He looked really good in the 1920 season. He put up some points. He scored some goals. He did, have a down season this past season, but I think a large part of that was due to the team that he was on. The Blackhawks were not impressive by any means in terms of offense and goal scoring. They kind of were the bottom feeder of that division. So I'm looking for them to take him and, possibly be this big role player who can kind of have a bounce back season with the Kraken.
Mike?
Yeah, I was on Gar said, I was on the Subban wagon as well. I was going to grab him, but I got to go with Gaudette. I mean, here's a guy who's 24 years old. You need a guy like that, a nice young guy. I liked all the young guys. So, yeah, I'm going Gaudette. Make it nice and easy. 11 points in 40 games.
I guess I'm going to be the black sheep of the family here. So when I went through this list, the name that stood out to me for a couple of reasons, and I know it's a defenseman again, is Nikita Zadorov, who really shouldn't even be in Chicago. He was only let go from Colorado due to cap problems. He is a big guy, 6'6", 235, still 26. He's not a big scoring type defenseman, more of a crease clearer. So I don't really think he's going to make that much more than the 3.2 he's currently allotted. But that's a guy who, even if you decide not to keep, I think is max value if you were to flip him. So given the fact that I think Calvin DeHaan is very overrated and older and more expensive, I think Zadorov and I get the Gaudette love because he's probably the only guy I consider from the forwards, realistically. I think Zadorov's a pick simply because you can't teach 6'6". It's like it's what's his name? It's like Big Cass, and you can't teach that. You can't teach being 6'6", and then he puts skates on him. So, and he's a guy who, again, really shouldn't even be here. He should be in Colorado. It's the cap problem that led him there. So in my cap compliant team, I did have Nikita Zadorov. The Colorado Avalanche, and again, the name that just stands out to you right then and there is Gabriel Landeskog, who is an unrestricted free agent. Therefore, if you take Landeskog, all you're really picking is 1 week, and he'll drop the gloves, as you can see there. You get 1 week of additional negotiations. That's all you get. We talked about it in the open of the show. I think we all agree there's a legit chance he may end up in Seattle, but I don't think anybody said they would necessarily take him, or at least we can go back to that. Mike Velarde, if I recall correctly, you liked Jonas Donskoy.
I did. Yes. Like I said, middle six guy. He'll give you some decent points. I think he had actually a career high. 17 goals, 4 straight years of 30-plus points. That's not bad for a middle six guy. And his contract, he's got $3.9 million for 2 years, not overly expensive. But like we were talking about earlier, if you take a guy like Landeskog and Giordano and a guy like Tarasenko, then you're getting too many. It's almost like you got too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. So I don't know. I kind of like not going the Landeskog route and going with a guy like Donskoy.
Is that Michael Vecchione? Is that guy the Flyers had that everybody thought was great and then left?
I believe so.
I thought so too.
Mm-hmm.
Garth, where are you?
Yeah, I got to go Donskoy here as well. Really, for the fact that it brings another veteran presence to this team. I got a stat here that he, has made the playoff each of his 6 seasons in the league. And you can't just replace or give a guy playoff experience. So that would be huge for this team. So I got to go Donskoy here.
Ernest says price will be high as it is, but they really want land, so they got to work it out. Trust me. No, that's very possible. It is, but I do think financially they can give him the best deal simply because they have all the cap space in the world to work with. That's why I think it's Ernest Badiola. I will differ from you two, but very similar player to me is JT Compher, who Brandy Hayward asked about earlier in the show. So JT Compher is a little bit younger and a little bit cheaper. I think that Donskoy is more offensively talented than Compher, but I think Compher is a little bit more – that third line role. Energy type player, has a little bit of offensive skill. I like the fact that he's just a little bit younger to me. I think either of them would be perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine if it's Donskoy. I think those are the two on the forward side of things that make the most sense. I know that everybody else is a UFA or somebody nobody's ever even heard of. On the defensive side of things, nobody's taking Eric Johnson off their hands. So to me, it's Compher or Donskoy. I really wouldn't care either way. Mike?
Yeah, no, I'm with you guys. I'm Donskoy. I was actually thinking about Eric Johnson for defense purposes, but you got to take Donskoy in that spot.
Noah, did we start with you, or did I start with Noah? Is it you?
Yeah, I got to go.
I'm trying to remember who I started with.
Look, I like Eric Johnson. I'm not taking on a $6 million cap for a 33-year-old. I think that says 2023. That's just way too much for me. If I was going for, at best, overall player, I would take Gabriel Landeskog. But like I said, I'm uncomfortable about the idea of taking a UFA that you then need to sign. I'm with you guys, all the way. It's between Donskoy or Compher. I'm going to go with Brian on this one. I will take Compher because he is a bit younger. Now, I will say I think Donskoy is the better player. But, Compher's, a few years younger. The contract's basically identical. Maybe he has some upside. I would take Compher. But like you guys said, can't go wrong with either of those two.
Yeah, I think we're splitting hairs here, and I know it's not that much of a difference in money, but I do think that, again, they want to keep that cap. They don't want to necessarily blow it out to start. So, again, either way I think is fine. I had Compher in my list here. The Columbus Blue Jackets, at the same time, give you nobody but a decent player to start. Garth, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah,
There's not a lot to pick from here, though.
I think that kind of the flashy pick here would be Max Domi. My thing with him is really just the severity of the injury. I'm hearing that he's expected to miss at least the beginning of next season. So it really comes down to how much Seattle thinks of that injury and how much time he potentially could miss. Is it going to affect him as a player whatsoever? If they don't go with him, then the guy I do like is probably going to be Kevin Stenlund. I think that he's just another younger guy who doesn't really bring a big cap hit, and they continue to add to a core of youth.
I thought it's obviously Domi because you're getting him for nothing. It was a shock that he was exposed, in my opinion, in injury or not. It's still only a 26-year-old player. I think if you're looking for somebody who you can flip for assets, I think he's clearly the name. Literally nobody else. They're so bad at this point that he's really the only guy I consider. Mike?
Yeah, no, I'm on that train too. I was between a couple different people, but Stenlund is the guy that I'm looking at too, Kevin. $1.5 million in 1 year. Max Domi is a nice pick, like Brian, like you said, but the injuries are really the thing that kind of steers me away from him. But I'm going with Kevin Stenlund.
No debate in my mind. Max Domi. Now, I hear what you guys are saying with injuries. He has a lot of risk around him. I think, he's very inconsistent as well. But if you're drafting a guy in pure talent, you mentioned Brian, he's still only 26. He does have another year on that contract, so if it doesn't work out, you can trade him. And I think easily a team would trade for him if they wanted to give him up. I just think he has a lot of talent. If he can put it all together, I still think he can be a 50, 60-point guy. I'm taking Max Domi, and honestly, it's not even close.
Yeah, Ernest Seth Jones not available. He's available in trade, and from what I hear, it's going to cost you quite a bit. I agree with Noah. Mike Valori.
Couple things here. I was on the fence as well with Domi and Stenlund, but like you said, even if you take Max Domi, yes, $5.3 million, to 2022 UFA, but what's the worst thing you could do? End them up on a long-term injured reserve stash. You know what I mean? So, listen, if he comes back next season, he might be the number one center on that team.
Absolutely.
So, somebody has to score on the team. Listen, if you take a chance when, like you said, it's almost like you're taking a chance for nothing at that point. So, what's the difference? I'll go Domi.
Yeah, to me, I just think that I've been looking for somebody established. Again, it's limited risk because it is just 1 year. If you're wrong, you're not stuck. And I think he is a tradable commodity as well. Dallas Stars, a down year after their shock Stanley Cup final appearance. Here's another team that doesn't really give you a lot to work with. Mike Galetta, I'll start with you here. The problem, I think, so Ben Bishop waived, but I don't think anyone's taking a 34-year-old goalie. A lot of the better players, like a Jamie Alexiak or a Sami Vatanen, they are UFA. So, again, not a lot of value there. Does anybody stand out to you on this one?
Not much, but is it Adam Masharian? Did I say that right? Masharian from Dallas. Is RFA, 23 years old. He finished third in goals, 18 in the AHL in 2021. Another young guy. I just like the young guys and fills out another forward for your team.
This one is really tough because when I look at this list, there's not a lot popping out for me. I do like Ben Bishop, but I'm not taking him as my goalie because there's someone I'm taking later to be the starter. I'm looking at the defensive core because on the forward core, I don't like Andrew Cogliano, honestly, and you have to sign him as well. Blake Como was on Pittsburgh a few years ago. He's absolutely terrible, so I'm never taking him. On the D-line, it's between two guys for me. It's either Andre Sekera, if you want that nice veteran defenseman, or Julius Honka. We already have a lot of defensemen. We do have a lot of RFAs as well on the defense, so I'm kind of leaning for Sekera.
Mike?
I'm going Mashburn as well. I don't really know why. Just one of the names on the list. I'm serious. It's a cheaper player. It's an upside. It's an AHL guy. It's just a cheaper player. He's an RFA. I don't know. I just take it a poke.
Garth?
So I don't think that Ben Bishop will be absolutely terrible here. However, I don't think they go with him because of who is going to be available later on in the draft. For me, it's definitely going to be another youth guy, somebody on the younger side. I do like Masherin, but for sake of diversity and a different name here, I'm going to throw out Brennan Othman. He's just a big guy who likes to go out there and hit people, and he has a really, really strong shot. He's kind of like that sniper player who can come up with these big-time goals late in games.
I consider Julius Honka here, but I have other defensemen that I liked, and I was so heavy deep on D at the time. Yeah, Masherin's, again, it's more a money play. It's inexpensive. He's young, so I think that I lean that direction. Ernest asking if they protected Pavelski. They did, yeah. So he's not available. So I think this ends up being by a default. I don't think anybody's like super excited about. Ooh, I'm getting Adam Masherin, right? But it just kind of falls that way. Is kind of the way I guess my read on it. Which is kind of a similar thing we're probably going to agree on with Detroit, because again, really not a lot of names there where you're like, wow, I really want to add this player to my team. I'm trying to think what I started with. I'll just start with Mike Velarde on this one. The Detroit Red Wings.
Yes. I think the pick that makes sense is Nemestikov, but I would go with Troy Stetcher, defenseman. 1.7 million, 2022, UFA, right-handed shot. Probably another defensive guy for me. I'm probably running out of defensive guys right now, but we're gonna go with him.
Arthur?
Yeah, another list here where really nobody jumps out at us, guys. I'm personally not really excited for any of these names if I'm the Kraken, but I'll agree here. I think that they do go with Stetcher.
Mike?
Well, two things. One, I like Stetcher. He's a native of British Columbia, and he went and played in North Dakota with Hackstall. So I definitely think it's a good fit. 27 years old defenseman. You put him in there. I'll take Stetcher.
No.
Really tough one again. You know, I do like Dennis Cholsky a lot, that RFA defenseman. Not a big fan of any of these forwards. If I had to pick one, it would be Nemestikov. I'm probably going to agree with everyone here. I picked him earlier in my mock. I'm going to pick him again, Troy Stetcher.
The reason that I actually, and you brought the name up that I had, which was Dennis Cholowski, is because former first-round pick, he hasn't really panned out, but I think that's lack of opportunity more than anything else. So from a purely high upside, high pedigree player, I think he's the guy. The problem with Nemestikov is, as apparent as it was once he left Tampa Bay, is he was a product of Tampa Bay. Wherever he was, he needs a strong surrounding cast to be relevant. And I don't even mean like good. I mean relevant. Like he was terrible everywhere else that he went. New York, Ottawa. He was better in Colorado because it's Colorado. So in my mock, I had Cholowski simply because of the higher upside and the youth and the cheap contract. Just you can say maybe Yevgeny Svechnikov. I wouldn't really hate that at all. So I think either one of those two, because he's also a younger guy. I think Cholowski at least continues youth on the blue line, which you have 7 defensemen already taken this far through.
Hey guys, just excuse me for 1 second. I think I'm going to roll because the weather's getting pretty bad up here.
Right.
It's getting, thunder and lightning. It's really getting bad up here. So
well, be safe. Be safe up. Where are you, Albany?
I'm in Schenectady, New York. Yeah, right next to Albany. So it's getting pretty bad up here. So, all right, guys, have a good draft. Talk to you later.
Next up, the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Mike Velarde, I know you love James Neal, don't you?
It's not that I love him.
I love him. I absolutely have a man crush on that man ever since he left Pittsburgh. Been rooting for him ever since. Love that guy.
Yeah, great.
No, where are you on this one?
See, when I did this earlier, I actually took Clefbaum, but we already have 7 defensemen, so I'm kind of just going to strike all these defensemen off the board. Obviously, like I said, I love James Neal. Do I love that contract? Not really. It's really tough. It's probably between Kyle Turris or Kahira. I don't even know if I'm saying that right because he's an RFA.
Yeah.
Or Dominic Cahoon maybe, but I'd just go with Turris, I guess.
So I actually really like Tyler Benson here, guys. I think with all the veterans that Seattle's going to be able to snag up in this draft, going with this young guy who's kind of a project player who has shown, great scoring ability in the AHL. They just need to get to transition over to the NHL, obviously, that, they're okay with taking kind of a project player here.
From what I hear, Tyler Benson is a waiver eligible, so that kind of carries some risk. I like the guy that Noah mentioned, Juhar Khaira, center. Apparently he's more of a guy who hits people, brings a little bit of energy. So they're going to need somebody like that, and he's younger too. So we'll go with him.
This was actually a little hard for me because I hate everyone.
Nice.
Like literally nobody remotely stands out to me where I say, wow, like that's somebody who I really, really want to add to my team. So the name that I went with was Devin Shore, who's a bottom 6 kind of guy, 3rd line, 4th line, left wing. Not going to wow you with the offensive talent. He played for a couple teams in the league, but he was also a high pick before, 2nd rounder. It really inexpensive. You're bringing him really there for the veteran experience more than anything else. But there's really nobody else. I mean, if you start looking at a guy like Dominic Cahoon also stood out to me, but I thought he was younger than he actually is. At least Shore's locked up for a couple of years, so I don't necessarily worry about signing him again. He was the guy that I had in my list was Devin Shore. Nothing's in like the world on fire here. There's just nobody who's like, wow, like that's a great addition. James Neal, to me, if I'm spending almost $6 million, I'm just not spending on him. That's all. So that's just where I'm at with that. And even Koskinen, the goaltender, I'm letting them be on the hook for that. It's not really my problem. Florida Panthers had some pretty interesting names. Frank Vetrano obviously stands out, had a really good year last year. For me, though, the name that I liked the most here is really the obvious one because they pretty much made it clear they're going to sign this guy, and that's the goaltender, Chris Driedger. So this is probably the easiest one, right? Because they pretty much already said, we're going to sign this guy, which is interesting because he's a UFA. Why even take him then?
Yeah.
But whatever. I think this is the obvious pick, though.
I don't know. Are we going in order? What are we doing here?
No, it can go.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot about this move. Now, if it were me, there were a lot of goalies I saw later that I was interested in drafting. But if it were my pick, I'd probably take Vetrano. But, if it's basically confirmed they're going to take this guy, then, I'll just go with Chris Driedger as well.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot on this. I have him going, Driedger going as well. Apparently, he won't even cost the money it'll take to be like a fledged starter type. He won't ask for starter type money apparently, because he does. Listen, his small sample size, 0.929 goals against average in his career. That's very good, or save percentage, I should say.
Garth, this was one of 3 goalies you saw in the playoffs because Florida had all kinds of goaltending problems when they played the Lightning in that series. What was your take on him?
Yeah, so I think that he, had a fantastic regular season. Not so much in the postseason. That could be just the lack of experience, honestly, though. Like you guys said, I think the pick here is pretty safe that they are going to go with him. I will say that one other name on this list, though, that I do really like is Wenberg. However, he is a UFA, so, it makes no sense for them to take him there. I say they got to go Driedger here as well.
I think they made it clear that's the way they're going to go. I just don't understand, like he's a free agent. Just wait a week, pick somebody else. But neither here nor there. They made it clear that's their guy. That was the easy pick. The LA Kings have a couple of names, or at least one that stands out to me, which is Brendan Lemieux, the former Ranger. Of course, he's unprotected because he stinks. Jonathan Quick being exposed is interesting given his pedigree and his history, though he's 35 years old. So I have a little pause on there. North, Jesus Christ. Noah, you'll remember Olimata, the former Penguins defenseman. He's probably the name that stands out to you. Where were you on this team?
Well, I do like Olimata. He's probably not my pick. Jonathan Quick, $5.8 million until through 2023, just a hard pass. This isn't Jonathan Quick from 5-10 years ago. This is Jonathan Quick right now. I'm not taking him. I'm actually looking at the forward core because, we already have 7 defensemen. Don't need another defenseman. You mentioned Lemieux. I'm honestly not a big fan of him. I think he can hit and all that, but offensively, he just is absolutely terrible. I do like Athanasiou. I think he is a pretty solid, two-way player, and he's an RFA, so no risk. But my pick, it might be a little bit out of left field. I actually went with Blake Lizotte.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, we are running out of defensemen. I didn't take, I think, more than 4, but I like the RFA Callie Clegg. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Defenseman. It's not really a huge pick. It's a buy low pick. It's a guy who probably wouldn't play a lot right away, but it'll give him some organizational depth. So I'm just going to go with somebody who's not going to cost a lot.
Garth?
Yeah, I got to go with Andreas here. He gives them a lot of flexibility as he can play across the board in the forward positions. And I just think that, he has been down the past couple of seasons, but he has shown just a few seasons ago that he can be a legitimate goal scorer. And I think that they probably hope that they can get him back to that form that we saw him there with the Red Wings. So I think that they're going to go with him here.
I completely agree. That was my guy, and he stood out to me like a sore thumb because that's somebody who has played very well in the league. And the fact that he was traded to LA the way that he was kind of shocking to me. He's one of those guys that I was just really surprised that they let go of. He scored 30 goals in 2018, 2019. Hasn't really recovered that, but that's a guy I'm going to bet on. He's done it before in a different spot with really not a very good Detroit team. So to me, I thought that was a slam dunk pick. Nobody else stands out outside of Mata, and I'm not really paying for another defenseman at this point. I've built a lot of my D core to begin with. I love Athanasiou here. I think that's, to me, a pick that I just love to make here. Minnesota's been buying people out. Big names are currently on the street. But they haven't really left a lot here to consider adding to your team. So you look at the forwards. Victor Rask doesn't really do it for me. Nick Bjugstad's been around a bunch of teams at this point, so really nobody there stands out. On defense, Carson Soucy, maybe bigger kind of guy. For me, I thought the value was in Kaapo Kähkönen, pardon the pun, because obviously it sounds like somebody else that I know very well. But 24-year-old goaltender, he's played at times as their starter. Nobody else really stands out to me. No, I'll go to you here. What do you think?
2 players for me, you just mentioned him. I'm honestly a pretty big fan of Kaapo Kähkönen. I think from what I've seen, he has some potential. He's only 24, RFA through 2022. The other guy I looked at, you mentioned Victor Rask, but I don't know. I'm kind of iffy on him. I think Kähkönen could be a really solid backup for him. You know, him and Dregger could compete for that spot. I'd probably take Kähkönen.
Dakota Knoll, who I know is a big Wild fan. Soucy or Kähkönen, most likely Kähkönen with that low cap hit, then sign a 2-year bridge deal next. And we talked about some goaltending, which obviously the next team will be a very interesting goaltending selection. But so far, we've only taken the one, and that was Dregger. The thing about, to me, Garth, he's young. I mean, he could end up on your AHL team if you need him to. Like, it's not that you have to keep on your pro team. I think, got the most upside.
Yeah, this is a really tough pick, honestly, because, you know, the money that you'd be investing in Kaapo is not much at all. He does have a lot of upside, as Noah said. I think that he's a really promising goaltending prospect. The thing for me that makes it tough is, you know, as we discussed, it's almost for certain that they're going to go with Dregger, and I really have them taking Price as well. So I can't have them taking another goaltender here. I got to go with Carson Soucy on the defensive side.
Mike, where are you here?
Money-wise, I think for $725,000 in RFA, I don't know how you pass on Kähkönen. You know, like a lot of the articles I read, though, you know, Cam Talbot outplayed him pretty much most of the season, but he's also 10 years younger than him. You know, Kähkönen. So, you know, you're getting a goalie who's fairly young, showed some promise. I really think that they don't have to take a Carey Price. Maybe they can go with Dregger and him.
Yeah, Ernest Badiola asked about Matt Dumba, which Dakota Knoll noted that he was protected, which, of course, I mean, doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's been a guy that they protected. They paid to protect him last time, so he's obviously a core member. I think it's Soucy or Kähkönen. I'm going to go in the cheap money here because we are 15 teams down. We're halfway done, and we've not even spent $30 million. So we're in great shape for the second half of this draft to take a little bit more money on. So I feel pretty good about that. And here's where we might make some money is the Montreal Canadiens, and again, the biggest fish, the goaltender, Carey Price. And this is probably the biggest decision that Ron Francis has to make. Because who the hell thought that he'd be available number one? It's a calculated risk by Montreal saying, you know what, we don't think you're going to take that contract. And maybe they're right. And don't be surprised if they get a whiff that they're going to take him, that they don't offer something to say, listen, what do you want? Take somebody else. We'll give you a second-round pick, first-round pick, whatever. A lot of names here that stand out. Jonathan Drouin, the former Tampa Bay Lightning, who, frankly, that was a deal Montreal lost when they sent him they sent Sergachev there for Drouin. And I was a Drouin guy. I thought it was a very good deal for both teams. Drouin has not really materialized the way that, you know, we expected him to. Paul Byron, he's 32, 2 more years as a UFA. Those are the interesting names on the forward side of things. Look, you're not going to take Shea Weber. You might think about Brett Kulak. I got to tell you guys, I really think they're going to do this. And it's not even necessarily because he's so wonderful. But, my God, you start off the bat with that kind of goaltending, everything's going to look automatically better. And he's someone you can sell a brand new fan base. No.
Yeah, I completely agree. We mentioned this earlier. Like you said, we have tons of cap space. Even with you taking Carey Price, you still have a little bit over half of your cap left. You're not going to take Shea Weber, no disrespect. He's not even going to play, and his contract is crap as well. Jonathan Drouin's career highlight is getting involved in one of the worst trades I've seen in the last 5 years. So, no-brainer, absolutely no question, Carey Price.
Mike?
As we've been going over this, I've been I like the Drager Kapanen thing. So, and I've been taking a lot of defensemen. So I had Kulak, but now I'm going to take him out. I don't really know the certainty of his personal life and the situation, but I'm going to go Drouin. I'm going to throw that in there. I don't think that they're going to take him. I would, the way this is going, I would take him.
Garth, you know the player very well. He hasn't panned out at all.
Yeah, I don't see how they go Drouin here with Price being available. Nothing against him. I don't think he's a terrible player by any means, but as Noah mentioned, he just, really hasn't lived up to the expectations that they placed on him. And one good point that you made, Brian, is other than just drafting the best roster possible, one very important thing for the Seattle Kraken is building a fan base. And Carey Price is somebody that they can really, kind of have as the face of the franchise early on. So I think they have to go Price here.
And wasn't that what Vegas did with Fleury? I mean, I remember him coming out with the jersey and like, oh, I'm the guy. And listen, they were competitive off the bat, largely due to him. I mean, that roster and coaching. I mean, obviously, I like the coach. But yeah, I look at it and I say, I have a chance to take a player like this to get me off to an immediate established start. It's hard to pass. And I don't. And again, Montreal might call Montreal's bluff and say, oh, we're going to take a player. All right, what do you want? What do you want? What ransom do you need so you don't? Don't be surprised if that happens. But listen, from a Montreal standpoint, it's a lot of money to get clears out too. So, we all said, how are you going to pay Carey Price when he's 35? Well, maybe now you don't really have to. If someone takes him off your hands, then you figure it out. So I had Price in mind. I think it'd be super interesting. I think it'd be the moment of the night tomorrow night if he does it. Interesting there. Nashville was very busy trading Ryan Ellis to the Flyers. And then they had to protect 5 defensemen, which was kind of interesting. They've left some huge names, but they're just names. They haven't been the players that we remember them as. Matt Duchene going there, I was a fan of that over Kevin Hayes of Philadelphia, but he hasn't really panned out. Ryan Johansson's a shell of himself from what he used to be. So there are some names that stand out here, but Mike Velarde, your thoughts, because are they really going to put $8 million into one of these players that I'm sure Nashville would love if they did?
No, like you said, protecting 5 D-men gives them a lot of options to choose from, being Seattle. I don't think there's any chance they bite on Duchene or Ryan Johansson unless it's like a salary retention kind of thing. I think from versatility and affordableness, I like Callie Jankrock to go there. Been putting up some decent numbers. $2 million contract next year. Puts up some points. He's not a terrible player. I would not go the other route of the other 2 guys, though.
North.
So, there are a couple of players here that I actually do like. I like Pitlick. I think he's a pretty solid player, and he wouldn't be that much money. My gut tells me, though, that they're going to go with Yakov Trenin, and hopefully I didn't butcher that. But another young, cheap guy with some upside, they're keeping that cap low.
No.
If you're talking 5 years ago, Duchene and Johansson are great choices, but at $8 million, and not just that, with term, you're putting these guys, into their early to mid-30s. I'm not taking either of the 2 players mentioned, although I do like him. I'm looking at a guy, it says he's a right winger, but he can play center. He wins 53% of his faceoffs. He's only 27, and with a contract through 2026, it'll run out when he's 32. $2.8 million is not bad at all for a third, fourth line center. I'm taking Colton Sissons.
I thought about it a lot. It was 2 names for me. It was Sissons or it was Calle Yarncroke. And I just think that Yarncroke has been overshadowed in Nashville. Like I think he's got offensive talent. He's not a young player anymore, but that's a guy who is a middle six type winger. Probably better third line than second line, but he can give you a little bit of pop there. He had 13 goals, 15 assists last year, 28 points in 49 games. But he's been a double-digit goal scorer pretty much his entire career. Again, it's not going to be totally flashy, but plays a responsible defensive game. To me, like I said, I think it's Sissons or it's Yarncroke. The only problem I see with Sissons, it's not that I hate term, but that's a lot of term to get locked in for a guy. Like he signed there because. Like I think it's just a match, team and player. I don't necessarily want to take a guy on that's going to be on my team for 5 more years.
No, but I would say is $2.8 million for 5 years a lot for a third or fourth line guy who wins faceoffs at that rate? I don't know. I mean, I think that's pretty respectable. But I agree. I think Yarncroke's a good player. There's no issues with that.
I think at that point it's simply I think he would make a really nice fit on that team. I like Sissons, but. Again, if you're wrong, it's a contract you're more kind of stuck with a little bit because it's almost like too much term. Like term's good, but like not forever. not the what's it called? The Kovalchuk 17-year deal in New Jersey. Like that's not really the term that we're looking for. 17 teams down. Next is the New Jersey Devils. Now, I kind of struggle with this one. I want to go last year because I really hate everybody. Garth, is there any way they take PK Subban?
I don't think so. Honestly, my pick here, guys, is going to be Andreas Janssen. I think that he just brings a very good goal-scoring presence to this team. He's somebody who's still on that younger side to kind of get a good balance of veterans and younger guys. And $3.4 million through 2023, it's not a ton of money that they'd be tying up.
No.
I'm not taking a defenseman. I mean, PK Subban, probably one of the worst contracts in NHL easily. Ryan Murray, no disrespect, but I mean, this was a guy that was taken number 2 overall, ahead of Morgan Riley, by the way. He was just an absolute bust. Will Butcher's decent, but I'm looking at the forward core. It's between the two guys for me. Garth mentioned him, Andreas Janssen. He's who I took earlier. But now that I look at this, I have a lot of interest in Nick Merkley as well as that RFA, 24 years old. So, I mean, you have control over him. It's between Janssen and Merkley for me. I'm probably just going to stick with Janssen because he does have, a respectable contract. $3.4 million is not bad at all through 2023. I'm going to go with him.
Mike.
You guys mentioned a couple people. Will Butcher, probably not going to take a chance on him. Andreas Janssen, probably not going to take a chance on him. I'm going to go a little cheaper route, $825,000 to 2023 RFA. Nathan Bastian.
Thought about him. I just think of everybody here. I could put some money into a guy like Johnson simply because he hasn't been what he was in Toronto, but that might be more of a function that this is what New Jersey is. Like, yeah, he probably needs more of a surrounding cast to be relevant, but I think the surrounding cast we're building, he's going to fit well in. Second line guy, not a first line guy. I think that's fine. Not a ton of term. So he was the guy that stood out to me, but there was talk of them taking PK Subban. I just can't see it. I mean, it is 1 year. It's a lot of money for 1 year. And they can't retain salary on these sorts of things. So to me, Janssen was the name that stood out. The New York Islanders have left a couple of sizable contracts that are there. Dakota said Will Butcher would be a solid second pairing as well. So again, we have 7 defensemen so far. I think that's kind of the reason we're leaning a different direction, but I wouldn't hate that either for them. Garth, I want to start here with you because obviously you know the team well. You had to watch them for 7 games. I had to live through it. Thankfully, I ended up fine. But I look at it and I say, wow, they are hoping that somebody takes Eberle or Bailey, no?
Yeah, I got to agree here. As you said, no, this is a team I'm very familiar with after this postseason and last as well. I think that they're kind of just daring the Kraken, much like my Tampa Bay Lightning, to take one of these guys with a bigger cap hit. Eberle and Bailey, both are going to hit around that $5 million mark. I'm kind of really torn on who the Kraken are going to take here. I don't think that personally they're going to want to tie up that much money in 2 guys who are in their 30s who, have still shown some moments, but I would say are both on the decline of their careers. I'm just going to say Kyle Palmieri just because this is a guy that, isn't quite as expensive. He does have some veteran presence.
The pick that I love here, that I think would make just an absolute metric ton of sense, is Kiefer Bellows. Kiefer Bellows was a high pick in the first round that has kind of been forgotten about. Kiefer Bellows, Mike, if you remember, was the guy that I thought the Flyers should have taken when they took German Rupsov.
Yeah.
He hasn't really gotten a legit shot in the pro league, but he was a prolific goal scorer in juniors. And I just think that's a piece that can be foundational over time. He hasn't played enough. He is only 23. I think I would love to see them take Kiefer Bellows. I think if they take Eberle or Bailey, you're letting the Islanders off the hook for the money. And a guy like Komarov at 34, not interested. The fact that Eberle and Bailey are both 31, they don't really. Eberle's not who he was. And who he wasn't even that great to begin with, but he's not who he was. And I think Josh Bailey is an overrated player, bar none. To me, I would love Kiefer Bellows here. No.
This is really tough because when I look at this list, I'm not seeing anyone I particularly like. Eberle and Bailey, I think they're decent players, but, $5 million, $5.5 million with term, not for me for two guys that are 31 years old. If his contract wasn't running out, I'd honestly say Casey Cizikas is a really good fourth-line center cut type of guy. I'd probably even take him over Palmieri, to be honest, but I originally actually had them taking Richard Panik because I think for 3 years that contract is super cheap for a fourth-line depth guy. But you just mentioned him, Brian. I actually didn't even think of him before, but now that I look at him, I think that's a perfect pick. Kiefer Bellows.
Mike.
Well, I'm gonna let one of the Islanders guys go and slide a little bit. I'm gonna give them Jordan Eberle. Listen, he's 31 years old. Is it a sexy pick? Probably not. It's a safe pick, I think. I think he's a legitimate goal scorer, put with the right guys and the right team. He's a top six forward. I mean, any way you slice it. Yes, he is making 5.5, I believe, for another 3 years. That could be a problem.
I look at a guy like Bellows and say, wow, like I can get that guy for nothing.
Right.
First round pick with that kind of offensive pedigree, just hasn't seen it yet. Hasn't had a shot. To me, financially and for every other reason, I'm letting the Islanders die on the vine with those contracts. To me, I think it's all day. I'll go last here. The Rangers were probably the best team set up for the expansion draft because everybody who was young was exempt. Lafreniere, Kakko, Fox, these guys, Shesterkin, they were all exempt. So off the bat, you have guys you have to worry about. Then their protections came in. Panarin was an NMC. Kreider was an NMC. Zibanejad was an NMC. You had Trouba locked in. They had an extra defensive slot they just gave to Libor Hayek because they had nobody else to use it on. I will go down the line here. Noah. Look, it's not going to be Tony DeAngelo. All the Rangers fans watching, look, it's not DeAngelo. Just stop.
It's not DeAngelo because not only does he make $4.8 million, he barely played last year. His biggest highlight the past year was actually using those burner accounts on Twitter to roast people. So no, it's not him. It's between two guys for me, Brian. It's not Goudreau because I saw what you posted yesterday. They're trying to offer him that 6-year, $3.6 million deal. They just got him, so they're not going to let him go. Ideally, it's between the two RFAs in green for me, Julian Gauthier and Colin Blackwell. And at first, I thought about Gauthier, but when I looked at Blackwell last year, Brian, 22 points or something like that in 40-something games, only playing 14 minutes. I'm honestly surprised he was unprotected, so I'd probably take Colin Blackwell.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there, Colin Blackwell. 12 goals in 47 games, like you were saying. Reading a couple articles that said that the Rangers opted to protect Kevin Rooney instead of him, and that kind of made him, Blackwell, an easy decision for a team like the Kraken to take.
Yeah, I got to agree with both of these guys. I got to go Blackwell. He's just kind of that diamond in the rough kind of pick for them where if he doesn't perform really well, they really haven't lost out on much. And if he does play to the, capability that we've seen in the past, they get a huge pick here.
Blackwell, this has been going on in Ranger fans for a while as to who did we like, who did we not like, who was going to be that seventh guy, because there was only one pick, was the seventh for forward protection, was the only thing that was upping. I am surprised that it was Rooney over Blackwell. Not that I necessarily need to keep Colin Blackwell, but Rooney is actually a center. Blackwell's more of a wing. So I understand, I guess they picked Rooney because of the premier position. To me, Blackwell's production was a result of playing with Artemi Panarin primarily. So I don't necessarily think that is something he's going to continue to do. It'd be funny if he did it. Don't think it's going to happen. The reason that I think it's Julien Gauthier is because Julien Gauthier was a Carolina Hurricanes draft pick by, you guessed it, Ron Francis. Kid's got size. Kid has offensive ability. He's just blocked in New York because there are three wingers on both sides ahead of him on the depth chart. You're not going to get ahead of Lafreniere, Panarin, or Kreider. You're not going to get ahead of Buchnevich, Kakko, and Kravtsov. So there's just no spot for you. I think he can be a 20-goal scorer in the league. He's just not going to be in New York. And the fact that he's here, a former first-round pick of Ron Francis, I think it's a slam dunk that he is the pick. And he was the guy that Rangers fans didn't want to put out here because they think he has so much potential. Not that I disagree, but there's nowhere for him to play. Brian Burke, who was taken from Dallas? Dallas, we had Adam Mischarin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So I have it as Julien Gauthier. It wouldn't surprise if it was Blackwell, but I'm using the connection that Ron Francis drafted Gauthier to make. I'd rather it be Blackwell, frankly, because I think it's fool's gold. He can't do that again from an offensive standpoint. Ottawa Senators stink. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
There is nothing here. So the name that I picked was Vitaly Abramov, who, if you remember, was the centerpiece to the deal that sent Duchesne to Columbus. Other than that, guys, Stepan is a UFA. Dadonov is getting paid way too much money at 32. Chris Tierney, I can see that maybe it's a touch pricey. No, I can go first.
This is another one you look at. No disrespect to Ottawa, but I mean, is this all you have? I think earlier I took Josh Brown just as kind of a depth defenseman guy, but I'm not going to go with that now that you pointed him out. I'm going to go with Abramov because he's at least young. He's an RFA, so they have that control over him once again. We still need some more forwards, and he has some upside. So, I mean, everyone else is just, a UFA or crap or both. So I'm just going to go with Abramov.
Listen, the Senators stink. The players that they have stink. I'm literally throwing a dart here and just taking Chris Tierney.
It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, they're awful. No, like you said, nobody's even attractive on that. Dadonov's making too much money. Even Tierney's making $3.5 million.
To me, I'm not going to invest that money in a player.
He's a middle six guy at best. Best.
Yeah, when this pick comes up, guys, I don't think too many people are going to be excited, let alone the Seattle Kraken here. But, a guy that Noah mentioned and you as well, Brian, that I got to go with here is Josh Brown. Just because the cap hit isn't huge. This is a guy who gives you a depth defenseman, a blue line presence, a guy who's just going to go out there and hit people, quite frankly.
So, no, you didn't like Matt Murray?
God, no, especially for that contract. No chance.
It's fine. Yeah, and look, again, this is not like the, look what we got from Ottawa type guy. It is what it is. Next up, Michael, your Philadelphia Flyers. And as we mentioned in the open here, the decision, I think, is if they want to take on any of these very large contracts for the Flyers. Jake Voracek's 31 years old, $8.25 million for 3 more years. James Van Riem's like 32, $7 million for 2 more years. And again, what do you think they do? Do you think they go with one of these guys, or does anybody else seem interesting?
Of course. I mean, the head coach of the Seattle Kraken was the Flyers head coach, 2 years ago? So he's going to have his pick of the pot here of which ex-Flyer he wants. I believe it's down to 3 guys: Voracek, Van Riemsdyk, and Shane Gostisbehere. I mean, listen, Gostisbehere had his best years with Hackstall here. And he's younger, not as expensive as the other two. I would love for them to take Voracek, but I think the pick here is going to be Van Riemsdyk, which gives Francis a huge problem. He's picking a lot of guys with a lot of term and a lot of – well, he's saying that term matters more, but the AAV, $7 million for 1 year is a lot. But can score 25 goals. He's proven that. He plays on the power play. Would probably give them a little bit of stability there. Don't be surprised if Gostisbehere is the pick, though.
Okay. No.
Gostisbehere is an interesting one. This is a guy that fantastic rookie season, and even now I think he could still maybe put up 30-something points over a full regular season. But $4.5 million through 2023 is not something I'm interested in. We mentioned him earlier in the show. I'm going to stick by it. I would take James Van Riemsdyk. I think he's better than Jacob Voracek. He's cheaper, and he has one less year on the term. Maybe a bit overpaid, but once again, like I said earlier, 2 years, it's not the end of the world at all. Rubtsov's an interesting one for a younger player, but they need that veteran guy who's shown he can score 25 and 30 or 30 goals at his best. Need to get that cap up a little bit as well. They have room to do it. I would take JVR.
Garth.
Yeah, I think the Flyers are going to, luck out here. I do think that the Kraken are going to bite on one of these bigger contracts. I personally have them taking JVR just because he is a little bit less money and the goal-scoring presence that he'll bring.
The interesting point you bring up, Mike, is that, again, Hackstall knows the team better than most, right? So, if he wanted to low-key steal somebody, you know who the low-key steal would be in that group of players?
Probably Robert Haig.
Sandstrom. Because Carter Hart gets all the press, and duly so. He's a very good goaltender with a very bright future. But Sandstrom wasn't that far off. There was a point there where they could have gone either way. Given the fact that we have them taking a bunch of goaltenders, I don't have him taking Sandstrom, but that would be interesting. I don't think it's Robert Haig. I mean, if it is, I think it's a waste.
Yeah, he was scratched for him a lot of times too.
Yeah, Gostisbehere's contract. I think I'd rather pay JVR 7 than Gostisbehere 4.5. And the fact that Gostisbehere was waived and nobody took him says a lot about where he is in the league right now.
Right.
I think it's JVR. I think it's JVR because, again, that is for them a legitimate top line player. Now he's not a top line player in Philadelphia. Talk about their depth if you want to. It hasn't really panned out on the ice, but he's got that talent still. He's not that detached from a 36-goal year he had in Toronto. So he's been okay. It's cheaper than Voracek, shorter than Voracek. I think those are the mitigating factors. Voracek's just a bum. I don't have any other way to say it. He's a bad guy. And we had Marcus Hayes on the show who pretty much said that you can't even talk to the guy. He's he goes on Twitter and checks down what you're saying about him. He's a total head case. JVR is very not a lot, very low maintenance type player. So to me, that's why I think they go that direction. I don't think they necessarily go. I mean, I understand Rubtsov, but he hasn't really panned out at all. He was supposed to be up already, and he's not. I think that's a guy who, again, they should have taken Bellows over, and they didn't, and that's good for me. But they're going to get a bit of and the Flyers fans will be fine with that because, again, it clears out $7 million, and if they intend to go get a Dougie Hamilton, they're going to need that money. I see we're keeping Mike awake today.
Yeah. Long day today.
JVR is the pick. Pittsburgh Penguins. So interesting set of names here, but no, I'll let you go first. There is a name to me that really stands out. So I will go last, but I'll give you the floor.
This is really tough for me. Luckily, I don't think we left anyone absolutely major unprotected. Who I would want them to take, I mean, if they could take Cody Ceci, they'd be my second favorite team all year. I think he's a product of playing with defensemen far superior to him, and it made his stats look way better than he actually is. I think he's honestly, at best, a top 6 forward. Even then, I mean, I don't think he's great. If we didn't have 3 goaltenders, I would think Casey DeSmith is a fantastic choice. I really like what I've seen from him. Pettersson's pretty good. I'm going with a forward here. I'm not going with Jason Zucker. I think that's who a lot of people think it would be. I honestly think Jason Zucker is overpaid and overrated. At his best, he can score 20 goals, 40 points, but he makes $5.5 million, which is absolutely terrible. I'm not saying Zucker, no question. I completely disagree. To me, it's between Brandon Tanev and Zach Aston Reese. Those are the players I would pick because I just think, honestly, they're cheaper, and Jason Zucker is overpaid massively. I would honestly go with Zach Aston Reese. Why? Because I think on that line with Teddy Bluger and Brandon Tanev, when Zach Aston Reese doesn't play, they're way worse. And he's a pretty young player. He's only 26, RFA once again. I don't get the hype with Zucker. Everyone, Pittsburgh fans love him. Everyone, when we left him unprotected, was like, "Oh, that's the guy." I think he's overrated. I would go with Zach Aston Reese.
And Dakota Knoll saying, he did have 33 goals in 2017-18 with Minnesota. He hasn't been the same player as that deal. I don't necessarily know that they regret that deal, but in limited time there, scored 6 goals in 15 games when he was traded there last year, and then just 9 in 38 a year ago. But again, obviously some injury issues. I think he's the pick simply because I think he's the obvious one. But I wouldn't hate them taking a guy like Aston Reese, a younger player, cheap guy, energy type guy, glue type guy, bottom six type guy. It really depends how you look at it. I think Zucker is the easy pick. The problem with Tanev is it's just too much term. Like, do I really want to get locked into these guys as a brand new franchise for 4 years? I don't know that I really want to.
It's not that Zucker's a bad player. I think he's a decent player. I just think he's overpaid. And I honestly think he's a product of playing with players way better than him. I think he's way worse than his stats show. I would take Zach Aston Reese. If they take Zucker, okay. I think he's overpaid and not as good as people think he is. But that's just my opinion.
Mike?
I had Brandon Tanev, but I think that you can find Zach Aston Reese for a lot less than the $3.5 million that Brandon Tanev is going to get you, which is very high. I don't think they want to pay that. So I think, and also Aston Reese is an RFA, and it won't be as much to sign him on his next contract. So I like that pick as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I gotta agree here. Aston Reese for me. He's just, such a solid two-way player. And as Noah mentioned there, the team performed much better with him on the ice versus when he was off the ice. And, he's just very similar to like a Yanni Gourde for my Tampa Bay Lightning. So I really like them going with Aston Reese here.
The reason Zucker stands out at this point in this juncture to me is that I just crossed the cap floor. I'm not even $5 million above the cap floor with 7 teams to go. So Zucker is somebody who I think, even if I don't keep him, has flippable value. So that's why I think it's Zucker. And honestly, from a Pittsburgh Penguins standpoint, they probably don't hate that.
No, I would absolutely love if they took Zucker.
So yeah, like I don't think you're upset about it by any stretch.
No, absolutely. I'm saying I would take Aston Reese. If they took him, I'd be pissed off.
Yeah,
but that's it.
Teams that stink continued. San Jose. Really not a lot here to work with. The guy that stood out to me was Matt Nieto, simply because nobody else does. And I know that it feels like we keep bringing these energy type players. He hasn't really had a lot of offensive success. I mean, he was with Colorado for a couple of years, 8 goals, 13 assists in 19-20. Had 15 goals the one year in 17-18. But again, another bottom six type guy, very inexpensive. It's just like nobody else even stands out to me though. Like you can say, oh, go take Ryan Donato. Do I really want Ryan Donato as an RFA off of 1.9? I mean, you could make that case too. I'm not in love with the player. I wouldn't hate it. I'm not taking Martin Jones, I don't want any of the defensemen. So for me, I kind of defaulted to Matt Nieto. No.
It's between Nieto and Dylan Gambrell for me. They're both, they're not old players. What I love about Nieto, his contract is ridiculously cheap for a guy who has that much experience. And, he does have a bit of term. So to me, it's between Gambrell and Nieto. I personally think Nieto on that fourth line on that contract for a few years is just really good. It's pretty hard to pass up considering the other players not the best. So I'd go Matt Nieto.
Dakota said redeem Simek. The fact that we already have 7 defensemen, with some other options still coming, he is. I mean, 2.25 isn't terrible at 28 years old. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. Mike.
Yeah, I was kind of on the same, wavelength as Noah with. I'm going to go with Dylan Gambrell just because, like we've stated, the Sharks are terrible. the group of players that are actually out there are very weak. Apparently, he's a local kid, so he would be going to a team that I guess he has ties to. So we'll go with Dylan Gambrell. Cheap, $1.1 million next year, RFA.
Garth.
Yeah, I think that they, will go Gambrell here as well. I wouldn't be shocked if they took Donato. It just kind of seems like the consensus pick from some of the mock drafts I look at for whatever reason that they like him. But yeah, I got to go Gambrell here. Cheap, another depth piece, younger guy.
I don't dislike it. I actually have no rooting interest one way or another. So being that I was the only one that said really, really into Nieto, I'll put Gambrell there. So it's all the same money. So it doesn't really matter. Here is where things get a little bit interesting. So St. Louis Blues. Obviously, and without question, the name that stands out is Vladimir Tarasenko, 29 years old, right wing, a UFA at 2023, so 2 years left at $7.5 million. That's obviously the name that just pops off the page at you guys. But I'll tell you why I don't do that, and I mentioned it at the start of the show. 2 shoulder surgeries, I don't know what I'm getting. And yeah, it's not a ton of term, but it's not inexpensive. It's basically 10% of my cap for 2 years. Close to it. I love the player. The fact that the Rangers didn't take him in 2010 still to this day haunts me. I wanted him bad. Like bad. And it didn't work out. They took Dylan McIlrath, who stinks. And Brian brings up a very good point. There is rumor that Seattle takes Tarasenko and sends him to Philly for Voracek. I honestly think I'd rather have Tarasenko than Voracek. I don't think that's a very smart move on Seattle's part. That might be what's his name?
I love it. They could have Voracek and they could have Voracek and JVR.
Coach, maybe I don't really know.
Take them both.
Here, the guy, and they've talked about Jaden Schwartz, but again, I love him too. He's a UFA. He's gonna make quite a bit of money. The name here is Vince Dunn. The name that Vince Dunn should have been traded well before this. This was a horrible move by St. Louis, unless they think that Tarasenko is going to get gone. Because I wanted the Rangers to make a move for a guy like Vince Dunn because, again, they couldn't protect him. Whereas the Rangers protected Libor Hayek for no goddamn reason because they had nobody else to use. Vince Dunn, to me, 24-year-old kid, plays both sides on the blue line. An RFA, it's not going to be a very expensive contract. That's a top 4 defenseman to me. So I love Vince Dunn in this spot. And I know that, again, Tarasenko is like that flashing red light. I'm not taking the risk. Garth.
Yeah, I think that if they do take Tarasenko here, it's to try and flip him to get value out of him. Because like you said, the health question marks, the cap hit, if they do keep him, it's the sexy pick. It's the pick that probably a lot of people want them to make. But I got to agree here, Brian. I really like Vince Dunn. He's going to add a lot to that defense should they take him.
No.
It's really tough. I know we mentioned Tarasenko earlier, and I said, should they take him? And I'd have absolutely no problems with him. I would take him, if they wanted him. I think he can still be a fantastic player. I will say another guy in the forwards I really like is Sammy Blais at RFA. I think he's a really solid. He can play center as well. But, you mentioned him, Brian. I honestly think for an RFA as well, he's still only 24. Vince Dunn is a beast. He was a key reason they won the Stanley Cup. After Pietrangelo left, he still played really well. I don't think he dropped a beat. He's a guy that gets 20, 25 points guaranteed. His career high in points is 35, which for a defenseman is pretty solid. I just think there's way too much value here, and I'm a big fan of the player. He instantly jumped out at me when I saw this. I was like, how is he even here? He should have been one of their first defensemen protected. Vince Dunn, no contest for me. I know Tarasenko's interesting, but I'd take Vince Dunn.
Mike?
Yeah, I just think – I don't think you could justify taking Tarasenko when a guy like Vince Dunn is there. You're basically getting him for free. He's an RFA. You're going to control him. Like you guys were saying, and I said earlier, if they do take Tarasenko, I think it's for some kind of value, salary retention to try and trade him or something of the other. I'd go Vince Dunn.
If they end up taking Tarasenko to go get Voracek, number one,
I'll love it.
Yeah, but before you say you'll love it, then you have Tarasenko.
I don't care. I just don't like
his shoulder
Voracek.
problems.
Listen, Voracek to me is a waste of money and what they paid for him. It's almost like a Brizgalov deal where he's just running out his deal now. He adds no value to the team. So why don't you give me a guy like Tarasenko who actually has done something before his injury? Voracek's going to give you 8 goals and 30 assists every year. What's that going to do? Nothing. He's just eating up players for other. He's eating up time that other young kids can be playing.
But wouldn't Tarasenko do the same?
Maybe. I just don't like. I want Voracek gone.
Look, I'm not
I would love
disagreeing.
to have Giroux gone too. To be honest with you,
That time will take care of that. I'm not disagreeing with you that Voracek has to go. I just don't think that it makes you're flipping problem for problem. I don't think it really matters.
yeah, possibly.
So, I just think Vince Dunn's a slam dunk figure. The defending Stanley Cup champion 2-time Tampa Bay Lightning have some names available, as we probably have guessed, because you can't keep this team together. And talk about $18 million over the cap until you're blue in the goddamn face. Look, they operated by the rules that they suggested be changed, and nobody wanted to go with them on that. So, like, it is what it is. We can have a very detailed discussion as to why Tampa Bay and other teams like Tampa Bay have an inherent advantage in the salary cap because of a zero state tax. We're not going to do that tonight because they'll take an hour, and I'll go off for an hour, and I'm not going to do that right now. But, Garth, there are some names here that I know you are not going to be overly enthused about losing. Not what do you want to happen, but where do you think they go?
Yeah, so I've kind of been debating this with myself for quite a while now. Obviously, this is a pick tomorrow night that I'm going to be dreading because we are going to lose, a very valuable player to this roster. I will say, even though you said, it doesn't really matter, who would I like them to take? Tyler Johnson, hands down. Please take him. I even wouldn't be upset with Palat, honestly, because he's getting up there in age. His production has started slowing down. But I think it's between Gord and it's between Killorn. It really depends on, do they want to go offense or do they want to go defense here? And I don't know who I'd rather take because we've already seen that line take a hit. If we lose Gord as well, all of a sudden we're only left with Coleman there, and that's going to be a tough line to replace. On the other hand, Alex Killorn is, very pivotal in terms of offense for us, great penalty killer, great goal scorer for us. I think that they're going to go Gord here, honestly. He's one of those high-energy players. He brings that sort of chippiness to a defense. He creates plays. He has forechecks very well. I think that they go Gord here, guys.
Yeah, real quick. I know we're doing a hockey thing, but I'm watching this Phillies-Yankees game, and Chapman just gave up a home run to McCutcheon, and his next 3 pitches to Hoskins were 100, 102, and 103.
I guess he was pissed to give the home run.
I think he was pretty pissed off. Anyway, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
This is tough. This is probably the toughest one so far for me. I will say one name that instantly jumped out to me is Cal Foote on the defense, only 22 years old, RFA. This is a guy a few years ago was one of the top, defenseman prospects in that draft, and since then I think he's kind of flown under the radar. Now I do think Ruta's a good defenseman. One more year on that contract, he's a respectable pick. I'm looking at the forward core because there's a lot of great choices here. I don't think they're going to take Johnson because he has term $5 million. He was a fourth liner for Tampa Bay. He's a good player, but he's just overpaid. Kind of the same thing with Gord. I think, once again, a good player. He was a really solid third liner, but $5.1 million with a few years left. Not for me. To me, one guy that instantly jumped out was Patrick Maroon on that absolutely cheap contract. He has that, playoff experience. He's shown he can perform in the playoffs 3 straight years. Patrick Maroon dynasty, 3 straight Stanley Cups. But, objectively, I think it's honestly between Killorn and Palat for a top 6 winger. It kind of depends who you like more. And to be honest, it's really close, but I think Killorn's contract is about $1 million cheaper. I would probably either take Foote or Killorn. We already have 8 defensemen, so I'm probably going to pick Alex Killorn.
Killorn was quoted as saying that he wanted to retire in Tampa Bay. He did not want to go to Seattle. I'm not sure how much of that they really care about. They're trying to build a team here. Tampa actually from a salary cap standpoint, Tampa would love it to be Johnson, Palat, or Gord. I don't think they really care, to be honest with you, because they need the flexibility that they don't have to keep some other people together. I personally think it's Yanni Gord. Again, he was one that scored the goal in Game 7 against the Islanders. Whenever there was something that was needed, he was a big-time guy. Tyler Johnson was waived, and nobody took him. I think, again, when you have a player who nobody takes you as you are, I don't think Seattle's going to be overly excited to do that, right? Palat's only got one more year, so you're not really like it's too small of term. To me, I think Gord's a great middle six, third line center. That's a perfect role for him. The out west a little bit. It's a style that I think he fits in very well. Smaller type player. It's only 5'9", 200 pounds, so not like gonna overwhelm anybody. But I think he's won Stanley Cups. He brings that presence right into the room. Maroon is really interesting, but I don't think that Seattle is going to Stanley Cup contention year one. I know the Vegas went to the finals. It's fine. But to me, from a totality of everything standpoint, I like Yanni Gord. I like the fact that I have a couple years with a guy who's won a Stanley Cup. But I got to tell you, I don't hate the Cal Foot idea at all. And that would really piss Tampa Bay off hard. Like, that really would make them upset. Because, again, that was a high pick they invested in a player. 22 years old. I mean, they need that cheap production from their defense to continue, because again they're paying so much to their top guys. Sergachev is going to need a raise too in about a year. So I do think it's Gord, simply because again,
you don't want to know who I want.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Unbelievable.
I remember. I forgot to be
bullshit. You start talking about Tampa Bay and it's fuck.
Go ahead. Is it Gord?
No.
All right.
The only reason why I think it's not him. He's got 4 more seasons at $5.17 million. I mean, that's a lot to invest in him. I think it's Andre Palat, to be honest with you. But I think Killorn is also a possibility. Palat at $5.3 million, he becomes a UFA, which I think then at turn, let's say Seattle's not in it at the deadline, try and trade him at that point. Try and get something for him. I think that's something that they can look forward to. Let's get him for the half a season or whatever. Trade him for some assets.
I will say, if they take Palat or Johnson, I'll be very happy tomorrow night.
And that's why it's going to be Gord.
That's why I'm going to be happy.
Because you said that. 4 teams to go. We are 1 defenseman short. And we need to make sure that everybody that we take is not an RFA.
Unbelievable.
Because we have only 16 out of 20 contracts set for next year. So that's going to color, I think, some of the picks that we make. As we move on to the Toronto Maple Leafs, there isn't really a whole lot here either. Mike, you'll see a guy that you're familiar with in Wayne Simmons. I don't necessarily think that they're overly excited about taking a guy like him. I think many people think that the Jared McCann is very interesting. He's an RFA at the end of next season. The pick for me is actually Alex Kerfoot, who came from Colorado, was a college free agent. He's a UFA in 2023. That he can be a second line center. Toronto does not want to lose him. I think Toronto went and got Jared McCann with the hope they could expose Jared McCann and keep Alexander Kerfoot. I don't think that's going to play out that way. So me personally, I think Alexander Kerfoot is going to be a Seattle Kraken guard.
I have him as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that this is just too good of a player to not, take to pass up on here. And I got to agree. I think Toronto doesn't want to lose him, but I think they're going to.
Me personally, I'm biased here. I know we need the UFAs, so I won't say him. The fact we gave up Jared McCann for Philip Hollander in the 7th after, he puts up something like, 30 points in 40 games last year. I cannot believe we traded him, especially after all we gave up for him. Absolutely hated that. But, Kyle Dumbass, he strikes once again. He traded Nazem Kadri for Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot. Barrie walked, went to Edmonton. Kerfoot, we need that UFA. He's a solid, respectable, third-line center. Alex Kerfoot.
3 teams to go. We have about $10 million left under the cap, so let's keep that in mind. The Vancouver Canucks. Look, we're probably not taking Louis Eriksson. Right? So their bigger defensive names are all UFAs. Originally, people thought Braden Holtby would be a really good spot here. I've already maxed out, for the most part, my expense in gold. Not that I can't take a fourth one. I still might, but it's not going to be him from a dollar standpoint. Mike, I'll start with you here. Who do you like?
Well,
remember, we have to take a guy who's under contract.
Well, that's the whole thing. If we were going with Drager, Kapanen, not Price, I would love to have taken Holtby here. Just because, 4.3 million leadership. It's kind of one of those things where, listen, Holtby's only 31 years old. It's not like he's 36. Well, I can see this kind of being like a Marc-Andre Fleury type of deal where, very, very proven goaltender. Was he on the Cup team?
Holtby?
Well, he wasn't on the Cup team, right?
The Caps team?
Yeah.
Yeah, he won the Cup there.
Oh, he was the goalie. Okay. So now you have a guy who has a Cup. Could be, if they want to steer away from Carey Price, they can go that route. Not that he would probably be their starter, but he'd be very good there for them.
Okay.
I know we're not trying to pick a goaltender, but
gotcha. No. Again, I mean, I can totally see that case. I mean, he was like the penciled in guy for a while.
Right.
Garth.
I like Zach McEwen here. He's just another cheap guy who provides depth, bottom six type of center. Really isn't going to do too much offensively for you. He is a very good defensive center. So I think, just a depth signing here by them.
No.
This one is, tough just because we're kind of handicapped trying to get those contracts up. Holtby's an interesting one. I like the player individually. I don't like $4.3 million. The forwards, most of these contracts are just absolutely terrible. I mean, there's really nothing here besides Jake Virtanen. I think he has some untapped potential. He's been a bit of a disappointing player, but I wouldn't give up on him just yet. For me, we need that ninth defenseman, I think. 26 years old. There's still some upside here. Has one more year. He's a UFA, but, I mean, he's not going to be expensive at all. Madison Bowie.
I looked at that. You mentioned Jake Virtanen, and that was my selection. 24 years old, former top 6 pick in his draft. Remarkably, like he's like a 2020 guy. His goals and assists are very, very close to each other, if not dead even. That is again not a top line player by any stretch, but we continue to bring in these middle 6 type guys. And someone's going to end up in the 4th line probably, but that's a guy who again he'll take a hit to make a play. He's a young veteran, if that makes any sense, because he's played so many years so far in the league. I mean, he's been in the league since he was 19. He's already played 6 years at age 24. So that's someone who I think is very interesting to me, somebody who really stands out. To me, I think that's the pick. I think to me, it's not Jay Beagle. It's not Antoine Roussel. By the way, this clearly wasn't me. This is somebody else.
It was me.
Mike, I was going to say.
How about that?
It wasn't me, though. It's like, I don't put that out there. No hate mail for Brian. Jake Virtanen, I felt was the only guy that really made sense. So with 2 picks to go, it's got to be a defenseman somewhere. So if it's not here, it's going to be Winnipeg. The Washington Capitals are in a very interesting spot right now because Ovechkin is unprotected, but come on, it's not going to be Ovechkin. No, I'll start with you here.
Fuck that guy.
There's a name that really stands out to me. I want to see if anybody gets it. Where do you go?
Connor Sherry. That contract is dirt cheap. It has some term on him. I really liked him when he's with us in Pittsburgh. Realistic, he'd be depth forward for them. I think it would be a good pick. You whack him on maybe the first line with Domi and a guy like JVR. He won't be as good as those players, but they could help elevate him a bit. And like I said, I mean, that contract is just ridiculous. But when I look at the next team, we still need, another defenseman. When I look at the Winnipeg Jets, there's a player here that I really like, and he's actually a forward. So I'm probably going to take a defenseman. If I had a choice, Sherry would easily be my pick. But since we need a defenseman, I mean, I'm just going to look real quick. None of the names are good at all. I mean, Nick Jensen, I don't know.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah, I'll go Brendan Dillon.
Garth.
I'm going to go with Jensen here as well, just because Justin Schultz and the injury history that he has. He missed, a handful of games last season, kind of was inconsistent. And just for the fact that Jensen's cap hit also is less.
If you go back to the Vegas draft, I'm almost positive they took 4 goaltenders. Vitek Vanacek had a very nice year. Okay. He's still 25. He can go back to the minors. It doesn't matter. You're adding value to your system. You can flip these guys. Who knows?
You just said that.
Yep.
And this is the guy that I think actually.
So you can take an RFA. He's a 2022 RFA. He has to be under contract. So he's under contract right now. He'll be an RFA at the end of the upcoming season. So he does meet that requirement for the contract.
And I think Vanacek actually started for him in game 1, and he was and he was pretty respectable. So I mean, that's a fair pick. Between Sherry and him, contracts are dirt cheap, but Vanacek is 25. So now that you mention it, I'm actually going to change my pick. I would go with Vanacek.
That's my guy. I just think it makes sense. Did I mention anybody just? I mean, again, the defense don't stand out to me.
I think that Vanacek's a very solid pick myself.
That leaves us with the Winnipeg Jets. And as you can see, we need a signed defenseman to complete our team. And I think clearly the best option is Dylan DeMello, who's got term a little bit, $3 million a year. Nobody else really. It's either him or Nathan Beaulieu. I don't think it's Nathan Beaulieu.
If we had a free choice, and I know we don't, I would honestly take Mason Appleton because I think he's a really solid young player. But like you said, we need a defenseman with some term. Through 2024, he's only 28. $3 million is not a massive cap hit at all. And, I think he's a pretty solid defenseman. He's shown that on a lot of teams that, let's be honest, haven't been the greatest. I did consider Beaulieu because, he's nice and cheap, and he does have a little bit of term through 2022, but I think DeMello is a better player. They have the cap, as we can see, so I would agree with you on Dylan DeMello.
The other guy I was honestly thinking, were you considering Mason Appleton?
Yes, he is the first guy I mentioned. He would be my pick preferably, but we do need that defenseman. So
I have DeMello as well.
Yeah, based on our needs here, guys, I would have to go DeMello as well. But like Brian and you said as well, no, I do really like Mason Appleton if we were able to take it forward here.
Well, as you can see across the board, we have 30 players drafted, 17 forwards, 9 defensemen, 4 goaltenders, 20 contracts that are signed for next year off the bat. We are under cap at 77.3, so we have about $4 million or so to play with, mind the scroll. And let's see what we got. What do you mean? Why is it not working now? You serious?
This is bullshit. This whole draft for nothing.
I mean, I have the names down the bottom, but it's just kind of annoying.
Unbelievable. I did this whole show for nothing.
No, you're fine. Why is it?
You know what? You might want to.
Look. Yeah. See, it's all right. It's fine.
Nice. All right, good. I feel better now.
Just calm down. All right, so that's our forward mix. Again, not a lot of long-term commitments. You really only have, we have 4 RFAs to worry about. What do we think?
I think those RFAs, other than maybe at the NSC, are going to be pretty cheap, honestly. And like you said, most of the UFAs are a few years down the line, or except for Max Domi, who I think they pretty much need to make one of their priorities. But I mean, a lot of RFAs here. I like this. This looks good.
Dakota said publish. Yeah, no, I got it. I figured it. Just stupid. I think it's a pretty balanced team. Look, what I really like about it is these guys that can play both wings, centers that are off wing. Again, I who's my top line there? I guess that my top line would be Max Domi, JVR, and Zucker, right? I mean, they're the 3 highest paid forwards, but I think that that's probably the way you go. 3 from the Metro. On defense, now again, we got to sign a couple guys because there's some RFAs here. But That's a good looking group, guys. I mean, look again. Now again in this set, you're probably selling somebody off because you have to get under contract and you have to get under the cap. You got to sign Jake Bean, you got to sign Zadorov, Vince Dunn, whatever you're going to do. I don't hate it.
If they can move some, maybe some forwards a year or two from now, a decor with guys like Jake Bean, Vince Dunn, and Hayden Fleury for the foreseeable future with term, that would be awesome. Mark Giordano as well as the nice veteran to lead those young guys. I still think he's got, a bit left in the tank. So honestly, probably like that defensive core even more than the forward core.
Let's do this again. I tried to see what that problem was with Vanacek because Kakinen can go down too. Yeah, I mean, if Giordano retires next year, that obviously frees up some other additional spots. But again, so we have $15 million in projected cap space already. Now, again, that estimated salary expenditure is 71. Yeah. Mike, your thoughts?
Don't have many. Just want to go to sleep. No, I'm kidding. Garth, you know what? I was just thinking about something. I love your Lightning fandom. I'm just sitting here watching and taking everything in. Do you wear the same fucking thing every show?
No, this is actually
I'm serious. The Lightning hat. It seems like every time I watch the show, that hat is on. I love it.
Lately, this is the hat that I've been wearing every time.
That's
as we get closer to football, it'll be changed out for sure.
To what?
Gators for college football and
Not
Chargers for NFL.
Okay. Chargers? What, you going all the way to the West Coast?
Yep.
Why? You and Drew are boys, aren't you?
Something with the color blue and lightning bolts.
All right. That's not terrible. I can go with that. Like, if you're Brian, you're just an asshole.
Why? I mean, yeah, but why?
Go ahead. Tell everybody why.
Why? Because I'm a Cowboys fan?
No, because why? Why are you a Cowboys fan? Why are you a Rangers fan? Just to stick it up everybody's ass in Philadelphia.
I'm a Rangers fan because I'm a Rangers fan, and I would kill you for a Stanley Cup.
Bullshit.
I love you.
Okay.
And there wouldn't be much.
Listen, I like the guys on this list. I wish I could see the list a little bit better because I'm on my little screen here. I can kind of say it. Like you said, the defensemen are very good. A lot of RFAs, but I think Vince Dunn, a bunch of those guys, definitely will get signed. Listen, if you got 4 goaltenders rolling in like that, I don't think that's a problem for you. And obviously the defense, it's going to take you a long way in this league.
Yeah, I mean, look, and if they don't go Carey Price, I mean, there's a lot more money opened up too. But I think the way this goes, it's interesting. I think they got to think about it. So.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how much more cap if they don't take Price. But yeah, I think it's a really good defensive core. There's a lot of youth there that is going to be there for a while should they choose to keep them. And what you're getting for the money you're spending, it's a lot of bang for your buck.
I think so. Is this a playoff team?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they make playoffs.
I think so too. It's wild, isn't it? It's such a slap in the face, like teams that have been around forever, they can't get in. It is what it is. Well, that was fun.
It's fantastic.
Fun exercise.
It's awesome.
So the expansion draft's tomorrow night. I will be watching it intently to see what it is.
What time is that?
What?
The draft.
The expansion draft's tomorrow night on ESPN. 2?
No, what time?
8. Thursday night. Now, again, once this roster freeze opens up at 1 p.m. on Thursday, I think we're going to see like a deluge of stuff. A lot of activity going on as teams know who they have left. We'll see what happens there. Friday night is going to be the first round of the NHL draft. So you're all welcome to join us. I will be on. I think Noah said he'll be on. I think Garth will be on. Mike, I don't know what you're doing. You're welcome to, obviously. It'll be round 1, which we'll be breaking that down. I will personally be on Blue Truth, the Rangers show, Thursday night, figuring out what the hell is going on with everything, because I'm sure many things will have changed by the time that I actually go live. But it's like Hockey Week on the Sports Box, which makes me very happy here. But a lot to talk about. Guys, any parting thoughts for the viewers?
Rangers suck. Go Flyers.
I just want to say this was an absolute blast to do with you guys, and hopefully we can do more stuff like this in the future.
Yeah. Just us, though. We don't want anybody else.
Yes.
Especially Paul McCree. Sucks.
Well, we need the hockey people. Paul doesn't really qualify as a hockey person. He'll tell you that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, on behalf of the Sports Box, thank you for taking the time with us. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know. Listen, comment, send us emails. They can be angry if you want. That's fine. Comment on the page, like the page, share the page. We're all over the place. Let us know. Did we get it right? Where did we fall off? What would you have done differently? And we'll see what pans out in less than 24 hours when this thing happens tomorrow night. And then again, we'll be live Friday night for round 1 of the NHL draft. So on behalf of Noah, Mike, and Garth, thank you for taking time with us, and we will see you later this week.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Sports Box. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media outlets. On Facebook at Sports Box Show, Twitter at Sports Box Show, Instagram at The Sports Box Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And also our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 free points. Thanks for joining us this evening.